Cool Figure TV. Revolutionary salute. Revolutionary salute. Like, share, subscribe. Welcome to the House of Revolution. I'm your humble host, the Yamin of Revolution. Prophecy is being fulfilled. You reap what you sow. Trump may be the last president. We got a World War III alert. I got some late breaking news. The revolutionary may be the last. Is the war starting tonight? Is the war starting in the morning? I don't know, but it's all bad and nothing good. Let's get into the content. Salute, soldiers.
Well, we better buckle up because this Sunday afternoon, we are now 8 days away from April 6th. That's the date that President Trump says Iran has to comply or face an even more devastating next phase of this war. By the way, a delay that Iran didn't even want. He extended that deadline by 10 days, and the media wants you to believe that means that Washington is in total control. But over the past 24 hours, the real picture coming out of this battlefield has been absolutely brutal for the official narrative, because over the past 24 hours, we got some devastating new information that completely blows apart the propaganda that we're being fed by Washington, by Tel Aviv, and of course by the mainstream media, which is in lockstep with both of these governments. And they are basically PR arms of the Pentagon. Here's the reality on this Sunday that they don't want you to focus on. The Washington Post reporting that the United States has already burned through more than 850 Tomahawk missiles in just 4 weeks as we now enter this second month of the war. Remember, it was supposed to be a 4-day war? Okay, so think about that. More than 850. These are not cheap Tomahawk missiles. These are not easy to replace, and we don't have the capacity to replace them yet. At the very same time, Reuters is reporting U.S. intelligence can only confirm with any kind of certainty that about 1/3 of Iran's missile arsenal has actually been destroyed. 1/3? Do you buy that number?
That's a lot.
So let me get this straight. We fired off a staggering amount of high-end munitions. We've hammered them with bunker-busting bombs. 10,000 targets. We can now confirm 10,000 targets. And we can't say with any kind of certainty that we've taken out more than just 1/3 of what Iran had. That's not victory, although that's what the White House would have you believe. That's not.
I seen that number the other day. That shit is really piss you off because you know they're hitting all kind of schools. They hit historical, ancient sites. That's on purpose too. They're trying to erase history. In every war, they erase history. That's alive within itself. But 10,000 different targets, bro. That's these people war criminals, man. Iran still standing. What the hell is y'all hitting? 9,000 was dummy models. 1,000 painted airplanes on the ground. All kinds like this. They should be ashamed of themselves. If you hit 10,000 military targets, it should be over. You hit them with pinpoint precision missiles, the best in the whole wide world. What are we doing here? Man, come on, because they don't want to admit, but they have been deceived, bro. They have been deceived, bro. They've been hitting inflatable airplanes, inflatable tanks. This happened with Russia and Ukraine. They fall forward with each other. So America getting this taste, they don't want to tell the Americans that they have been hitting inflatable military weaponry with $1 million weapon systems.
It's not dominance at all. That's an admission that this war is chewing through American firepower at a terrifying rate right now. Iran's still very much in the fight and has actually been holding back its most advanced weapons that we haven't touched. It kind of reminds me of Muhammad Ali's rope-a-dope strategy, taking a whole bunch of punches, just waiting and just waiting and just waiting, and then pouncing when the enemy is tired and worn out, when America and Israel are at their most vulnerable. And that's exactly why this next phase is so dangerous, because now the Houthis are in. Officially, no more guessing, no more maybe. On Saturday, the Houthis in Yemen have now launched their first attack on Israel in this current war. I spoke with Colonel McGregor just this morning, who told me that Houthi intervention was timed to raise the strategic economic cost by threatening access to the Red Sea, particularly in Saudi ports like Jeddah. In addition to that, the Houthis are now compelling our forces to fight on multiple fronts and further regionalize this war beyond the Gulf. So that means this is no longer just Iran and Israel. This is now a regional multi-front mess that can spread from the Persian Gulf to the Red Sea in a heartbeat. And if the Houthis start choking off Bab el-Mandeb the way that they've threatened to, it will be an economic disaster through the Red Sea. Roughly 12% of world trade passes through that corridor. So just forget oil for a second. All of that trade coming through, 12%. That's not some side issue. This is a global economic artery. Colonel Dan Davis on his show.
See, this is the problem. The U.S. military, second largest Navy in the world. China got the largest Navy. We got plenty of warships, destroyers, frigates, all kind of landing amphibious assault vehicles, float on water. We didn't see it all. They have that. Like, well, come on, they did it in World War II. They don't got the heart, bro. They granddaddies, at least their great granddaddies did. I'll say that. They don't have it. It just ain't the same no more. Thousands of people die in the water. Thousands die trying to land. Should be just like the movie. Trying to storm the beach. They don't want to do that. They want it the easy way. Ain't no easy way. All this is hard. And that's why the world is laughing, because they like the U.S., you got the military, bro. You just don't want to lose hundreds of thousands of people. The U.S. absolutely couldn't go to the Strait of Hormuz. They just going to lose half their Navy. They don't want to do it.
Saturday made the point that this might have been the strategy all along. You degrade America's missile stockpiles, drag us deeper into Iran, and then open another front through Yemen while the U.S. forces are already stretched incredibly thin.
10,000, maybe 12 or 13,000 by now, missile strikes has only netted you about 1/3 of what they had. And so that means that their ability to sustain is likely going to continue on for the foreseeable future. And that gives them confidence. And with the Houthis joining, that gives them more confidence. Kataib Hezbollah in Lebanon, all of this stuff gives them more and more confidence.
I'll tell you what's going to happen. It don't matter. See, this is their fault. This is where they begin with an error. Counting how many missiles did Iran have. What the fuck they got to do with them getting missiles from Iran, from China, from Russia, North Korea? Even Russia started using North Korean missiles, testing them. And then what did North Korea do? When Ukraine made a dumb mistake, when Ukraine made the dumb mistake, what the U.S. finna do, and invaded Russia, the North Koreans come in. If America invade Iran, you don't know what the fuck North Korea gonna do. I know when Ukraine invaded Russia, I know North Korea went fought with Putin, and the Russians were absolutely. Zelensky was complaining they getting bombed with North Korean missiles. They trip and count how many. It don't matter, because their allies gonna get them plenty of missiles to stay in this fight. They gonna have plenty of weaponry. So the U.S. is fucking up. Trying to say, okay, as soon as they run out, then we'll be able to run out. You tripping.
Offense.
Now look at what the Pentagon is doing. The USS Tripoli has arrived, carrying about 3,500 soldiers. The total U.S. forces in the region now well over 50,000, the biggest American military posture in the Middle East in more than 20 years. And this comes after Iran hit Prince Sultan Air Base in Saudi Arabia on Friday, injuring at least 15 troops there. Iranian sources saying that more than 500 Americans have been wounded or killed so far. So when they tell you this is under control, that America has already won this war, no, it's not under control. That's a bald-faced lie. You don't rush in.
You want to know how you hide U.S. casualties and deaths? This is something that a lot of Americans don't really grasp. When you think about a U.S. soldier, you're thinking about a lot of white boys. You think about some Mexicans. Think about even black soldiers. What you never think about is the mercenaries. A lot of Africans. Right now, we see them getting deported. Oh, he fought with the U.S. He got an African name. Man, is African. Was in the U.S. military. It's plenty of mercenaries, plenty of Colombians, Haitians, just people, all Polish people. It's all kind of different Middle Eastern people. Oh, they're in the military too. They mercenaries. So when Iran is saying that they whacked a bunch of people, them don't count. So the U.S. ain't got to tell us about that. They have bodies to throw around. That's a fact, bro. Y'all just don't understand that. I seen that in Ukraine. They not counting it. The casualties. It'd be a whole bunch of fucking mercenaries from all over the damn world. Russia done killed them. Ukraine be like, not Ukrainian, but they still dead. This is what's going on right now.
In more Marines, more paratroopers, more ships, more contingency special forces, the 82nd Airborne Division, because you're calmly wrapping things up. We're all done over there. You do that because you know this war is about to get a whole lot worse. What's going to happen in these next 8 days? By the way, here's the part that no one on like Fox or
sisters, bro. I feel bad for them in the military who didn't know no better. They, a lot of them don't got the balls. Just stand up, go to military prison, get kicked out, like it ruin their career and all that. Ruin your career and die. You won't have a fucking career. You go fight Iran. That's a fact. That's a fact. I'm steady warning people. Man, listen to these people, man. You ain't finna go win nothing. Ain't nobody to bully anymore. I know a lot of brothers and sisters got in the military. Some of them like, if I do have to fight, at least we got the best weapons and we know we'll step on people. You don't want to kill. You're like, I'll be all right. We got all that's over with. You going up against a real competitor here, real peer here. They lied to you. Hurt my heart when I seen that Iraqi shot down that refueling plane in Iraq. And the 6 people died. One of the brothers. He was a black brother. They ain't never think he was gonna be fighting no Iraqi. Ain't no combat like that. Maybe some training exercises. They ain't got the man in full-blown war. Plane get knocked out the sky. Family say they devastated. They like this war didn't have to happen. They don't want to say too much, but that was another black people like, man, this ain't right. So all the brothers and sisters, man, right now on their way to their grave, they don't even know it. I hate to say it like that. They have no idea, bro. They not never coming home. They coming home in a box.
Or CNN wants to really touch, and that is China.
That's not right, bro.
Because what we are hearing from our sources in the region is absolutely explosive. They are telling us China is not just quietly cheering Iran on from the sidelines. They are helping Iran build a battlefield nervous system right now. China has basically sent massive amounts of hardware right before the war started. We're talking portable anti-stealth radar that we've learned about, surface-to-air systems, the Baidu satellite support systems, signals intelligence systems, terrain mapping, cyber architecture.
That thing that's on the screen right now, I started to show that the other day, but I said, nah, I say from that thing shoot. They're like 50 drones at once. China not playing. They not ready. China will send 10,000 drones at you at one goddamn time. You're going to have to defend yourself. They quit playing with them. But it's something to help. Iran got all kind of shit over there waiting. And Putin done warned them. Putin done warned you. He said yesterday, he said the U.S. have no idea what they done got themselves into. That's Putin just trying to let you know, like, bro, this is going to be real bad for you. You can cut it out now and just get the, yes, humiliation. But it could be the fall of this empire. They could never recover from what could happen to them, bro. They could never recover from this. This could be the end of them, like the British Empire is right in our lifetime. That's crazy.
Sure. Real-time tracking of U.S. naval movement. Our sources say Beijing is using this war as a live fire intelligence laboratory against America's most advanced systems, watching everything we do. So is taking Taiwan next? What will we do?
And that's why you don't. That's why, see, the U.S., that's why they fucked up in Ukraine, letting Russia see all their weaponry in Ukraine. So now if the U.S. fight Russia, they know what you got. You wasted in Ukraine. And Russia was laughing at them. And some generals said that they didn't want to do that. Why would they send all of their shit to Ukraine? Now Russia know what you got when you try to fight a war. Now China's sitting back, looking at it. This is just the best you got. You ain't saving nothing for later. Except for the alien technology. You can't bring that out home. You can't bring that stuff out. But y'all know what I'm saying? This is with the top-notch military quality shit that we got. Ain't nothing on the shelf. And China just sitting back, and they don't even have to lose no manpower. They can send you Iran everything they ever wanted. As long I warn people about this. It's one thing about Putin, and I see China's. If you're gonna put it on the line, they'll go all the way with you. Putin, if your people want to die like Burkina Faso and Mali, they get you all the weapons you want. If your people, Iran is the perfect people. They got millions of people willing to die. The U.S., NATO, nobody could win this fight, bro. That's just a fact.
Watching everything that we have. Now, publicly, this is where U.S. officials actually admitting that China's top chip makers are supplying technology to Iran's military-industrial complex. Reuters also reported last month that Iran was nearing a deal with China for anti-ship cruise missiles. So even on the public record, China's fingerprints are all over this. China learning our systems in real time while Iran does the bleeding, absorbing all of these blows.
Taiwan weapons.
And the reason our F-35s are being hit, one of them downed, at least the one we know about, by Iran is because of China's targeting, we are learning. So Iran wasn't doing this on their own. It's all China. Remember, these aircraft, by the way, were supposed to be unhittable. That's why we spent, tens of billions of dollars on this F-35 program. They're unhittable.
No, the Taliban.
Okay. Not anymore. And maybe that
the Taliban couldn't hit them, because they ain't have no air defense systems. You wasn't fighting no fucking body. That's real talk. Now everybody know what it means when you ain't fighting nobody. They don't respect your battles. Ain't no boxer. If you don't box the real boxers, nobody respect your record. Like you 50-0, fought nobody. Okay, here was the chance. They were so jealous of what Putin was doing to Ukraine and slapping NATO up and over there. He was like, Russia shining, like the great Russian Empire shining. But I warned you, they got hundreds of thousands of people dead, man. It's costing Putin. This ain't no lightweight work here. This real World War III type shit is going on in Ukraine. Horror, bodies everywhere. If the U.S. wants that type of legacy, I told you, they're going to have to put it on the line, bro. They don't want to do that. They want to force us to, but our fighters don't. This ain't our fight. So they never could win this war if they don't have I hate to say it, the meat. It's like a meat grinder. You got to have constant bodies to feed into that machine. The U.S. don't have that, bro. And they hate it, but they don't have it. Iran do. Because this is a fucking holy war.
That helps explain the next humiliation of this. America and Israeli intelligence appear to have badly underestimated Iran's underground missile cities, as they're being called. One major reason the United States still can't confidently assess Iran's missile losses is because so much of that arsenal is buried in underground tunnels and bunkers, sophisticated bunkers and tunnels before the war even started. Dispersed stockpiles. This is why these missiles keep flying. This is why Iran can keep absorbing these strikes and still fire back. You can't bomb what you can't see and what you don't know about. And that's what an intelligence failure looks like in real time. And remember what Colonel McGregor and Colonel Davis told us on Thursday on our show. We did a whole military panel about this. Iran has not even used what he says are the most advanced hypersonic systems yet.
Well, my impression is that they have a large number of hypersonic missiles they have yet to fire. That's very clear. They made that clear because they started utilizing older missiles for the purpose of wearing down air and missile defenses.
Trump just ruined the U.S. Navy. He was at a banquet in Miami with the Saudi business elite, where he said the king of Saudi Arabia was kissing his ass. Humiliate that man, boy. They want that man dead in Saudi Arabia for what Trump did to him. Shame that man like that. But anyway, Trump being Trump. He also made a horrible mistake and told the truth about what happened to the aircraft carrier. He said they fired 17 missiles at us. Wow, from everywhere. Woo, we had to get out of there. We ran. Woo, boy, they wasn't playing. Hit us too. Hit us. Woo, but he excited that they got away. Every admiral, everybody been on the news saying that the Iranians was lying. They had never hit a U.S. aircraft carrier. Well, Trump said that's a lie. They barely survived with their lives. They barely got out of there. That's why they would fall away from the Iranian coast, because Iran was in line when they said they put the missiles on their ass, and Trump confirmed it when he said, yes, they struck that goddamn aircraft carrier, and the motherfuckers on the aircraft carrier barely made it out. That's crazy, because there's 5,000 people on the aircraft carrier, and I thought Iran would wait for the grand finale. It seemed like Iran tried to sink that bitch early in the fight. They not playing.
Also identifying air and missile defense batteries and radars and so forth.
Early in the fight.
I don't see any evidence that they're about to run out.
So let that sink in. They're exhausting defenses with older waves while holding back something far worse that we can't stop. Now let's talk about the propaganda on casualties, because this is where the media really loses me, loses all of us. We keep hearing the fairy tale that Israel is basically taking light damage, that everything is under control, that Iran is lashing out wildly and achieving nothing. Really? New reporting over the last 24 hours, citing Israel's health ministry, says 142 people were brought to hospitals in the last 24 hours alone. 142. So no, this idea that Israel's barely getting touched is nonsense. We're also hearing from multiple sources that the number of Israeli wounded is over 5,000. Yeah, you won't hear that on Fox News or CNN. And when Governments start tightening information during wartime. You should assume the real picture.
Hundreds of Israeli troops dead, but I seen one that was reported on Fox News today, blew my mind. American from Colorado, a small hat American who died fighting with the IDF, but he's an American. You see how they fudge the numbers? They're not gonna tell you that. I was telling you earlier, it's all kind of people that's part American or in the U.S. military or in other militaries. So this is another American died fighting that war. But guess what? The U.S. military didn't have to tell you, oh, we didn't lose a soldier. Yes, you did. He just was over there fighting with the Israelis. You see? See how they go? It's crazy.
Sure is worse, not better. Dr. Trita Parsi on our show earlier this week revealed that within 24 hours of this war starting, the United States classified U.S. casualties. You don't classify U.S. casualties if you're proud of how well things are going. So while all of this is happening, the economic fallout is already here. Brent crude prices closed Friday, $112 a barrel. Price is going to go much higher if this drags on. The Strait of Hormuz Saturday morning effectively closed. Reuters also says this war has taken about 11 million barrels a day of global oil out of the supply chain. 11 million. This is why markets are shaking. Gas prices skyrocketing across the United States. Inflation now up over 4%. That's why every family watching this video needs to understand this is not some faraway conflict that doesn't touch your life. It's already here. Now, Trump is also blasting NATO, saying the U.S. does not have to be there for the alliance after Europe refused to basically back this war. He called them a paper tiger.
This is NATO. And I've always said NATO's a paper tiger. And I always said we help NATO, but they'll never help us.
So this effectively is the end of NATO as we know it, and good riddance. And that's the real story this Sunday, not the fake news version. The real version of everything that I just went through is America is burning through missiles that we can't replace fast enough. Iran is still standing, has been waiting to strike their most sophisticated weapons yet. The Houthis are now in the fight. China appears to be learning from every second of this war. U.S. troops are getting hit hard. Oil is screaming higher, and April 6th is now just 8 days away. So when they tell you this is all going according to plan, don't buy it. It's garbage. This looks a lot more like escalation through exhaustion than peace through strength. So that's the news update part of today's video. Now I want to tell you about today's sponsor, which is tied directly to everything we just talked about in this global
war of attrition against Iran. We're a month into this war, and none of the stated objectives have been accomplished, while so many high-end US weapons are running critically low on ammunition. This is what we call terrible planning. Years worth of inventory were burned through in days. I mean, look at that. 11 interceptors were launched to stop this one Iranian ballistic missile, and none of them were able to hit their target. Here in Qatar, it's 4 interceptors that failed to stop a ballistic missile. Exact same situation in Dubai, where 4 Patriot missiles completely missed their target.
We are winning!
It seems the Gulf countries literally applied the doctrines of military genius, Sun Tzu. Just tell everyone you have tremendous amounts of ammunition. Now so many American weapon systems deployed in the Middle East have exhausted all their ammunition. All the markers are in red with the risk of total depletion within weeks, such as for the very important Tomahawk cruise missiles, but also Patriot and THAAD air defense interceptors. How come the US, with a mighty military budget exceeding $1 trillion, is now telling the entire world that they're running out of ammunition? After a month of war, the US and its allies launched 5,900 interceptors to counter 5,500 Iranian drones
Now,
and
the
missiles.
reason they're running out of ammunition because wars, they make money. It's for profit. We don't stockpile it unless we can make money off of it. If we was doing it to really defend ourselves, we have plenty of ammunition, but it's no money in just keeping shit to defend us. No, you got to better make money.
This rate of attrition is simply not sustainable. And guess what? Now the Houthis entered the dance as well. I'm sure the US has it all figured out, right? Right? Let's be real, US military planners expected a repeat of the 2025 12 Days War, a swift and decisive aerial campaign relying on overwhelming technological superiority. But this time, the blitzkrieg failed. The Iranians took the punches, and now that their adversary is showing signs of fatigue, they can finally say, checkmate. So in this video, we will analyze just how badly the US depleted its high-tech arsenal against Iran and what it means for the course of the war. Welcome to History Legends. If you're new to this channel, make sure to like, hype, and subscribe. Now, the ammo shortage crisis is only the tip of the iceberg. Many critical minerals required to replace the expanded munitions are just not available anymore. China controls 98% of global gallium production, 90% of neodymium processing, and 99% of dysprosium. These rare earths and specialty metals are inside every seeker head, guidance system, and radar module in the coalition's inventory. Same thing for tungsten, which is a vital component of projectiles used by gun systems like the CRAM. But there's one mineral that the US plans to double down on: copper. It's a critical component found in most American weapon systems we'll mention today. President Trump announced electricity demand needs to triple at the very least by 2030 to meet the AI buildup. Billionaire Robert Friedland said the world is sleepwalking into a copper crisis, and that if somebody's pointing a gun at you, you need that copper to shoot back.
To maintain global 3% GDP growth, we have to mine the same amount of copper in the next 18 years as we mined in the last 10,000 years. In the next 18 years, I've got to mine the same amount of copper as we mined in the last 10,000 years without electrification, without data centers, without solar and wind and the greening of the world economy. You people have no idea whatsoever what we're facing. You're dreaming.
Copper demand is beyond belief. Supply is vanishing. Copper shortage is just a matter of time now. President Trump has taken massive action to bring back copper production on US soil, including executive order and enacting 50% tariffs on imports.
Copper is a critical material, and the supply of copper is vital to our national security.
In fact, Stanley Druckenmiller, who many consider to be the all-time greatest macro investor, a self-made billionaire with a track record of never having a losing year, is very bullish on copper.
Czech was diagnosed with early onset Alzheimer's in 2018.
We own copper. It's not a genius trade. It's a big consensus trade. There's no supply coming on, a meaningful supply, very tight for the next 8 years. And obviously you have a big add-on from AI and data centers.
It's hard to believe copper won't be a huge beneficiary.
You have to be insane not to pay attention. JP Morgan, copper prices could soar further amid the tightening market. Look at the global production outlook. Right when demand is projected to soar by 50% by 2040, the United States and China are battling over mineral supply chains and technological supremacy because globalization stepped out of the equilibrium. And you can just see how when looking at the strategy both superpowers are taking. Bloomberg expects copper demand to reach 40 million tons by 2040. Energy transition, data centers, chips, and robots will be the main drivers of demand. Today, I want to showcase a company that is trading near its all-time lows right now, down nearly 62% in the past 45 days. The owner of the Majuba Hill Copper Project and past-producing mine in the state of Nevada. The sponsor of today's video, Giant Mining Corp. Ticker symbol BFGFF. This company is the only copper company I'm very optimistic about right now. I say again, Giant Mining has rarely, if ever, traded this cheap. I'm showcasing it to you at one of the lowest market caps in its history. It began in 2026 with a breakout over record-setting copper prices. It's currently trading at around $0.11. Giant Mining, US ticker BFGFF. This ticker symbol is available on Interactive Brokers and Charles Schwab, among others. Since President Trump's inauguration, his administration has aggressively pursued policies to secure US mineral independence. With copper emerging as a flashpoint, what we have been seeing is the very first chance, in my view, to be part of the rebirth of the American copper mining business. We can access it at its founding moment. As far as I can tell, Giant Mining, ticker BFGFF, owns a past-producing copper mine in Nevada, one of America's best and most cherished mining jurisdictions. Giant Mining, ticker BFGFF, in my personal view, is my #1 copper idea. Howard Lutnick, that you can see here, said, American industries depend on copper, and it should be made in America. No exemptions, no exceptions. Historic underground mines at the Majuba Hill project produced copper, tin, and silver from the early 1900s to the 1950s, including 2.8 million pounds of copper, 184,000 ounces of silver, and 5,800 ounces of gold. The infrastructure is ready. Access roads, power supply, transportation, water supply, or stockpile. Do your homework on Giant Mining, ticker BFGFF. Contrary to the US, Iran learned a lot from its setback during the 12-day war of June 2025. They realized the US faced a logistics problem and that they could not drag out a high-intensity war beyond the shock and awe of the first days. That's why Iranian military thinkers planned a sophisticated asymmetric attrition campaign designed to exhaust Western air defense capabilities while preserving their own strategic depth. An important factor is that accuracy is not as much of a critical factor in missile defense economics. That's a great advantage for the attacker. Meanwhile, the defender needs to ensure that every incoming missile is intercepted rapidly, and this eats up a lot of ammunition. As you can see on this graph, after an initial burst, the Iranians paced themselves. By conducting layered, sustained salvo attacks combining cheap drone swarms and low-cost missiles as an expendable vanguard, Tehran forced a punishing cost exchange ratio where million-dollar interceptors were traded for platforms costing a fraction of that. This saturation tactic led to a catastrophic logistical bottleneck for some of the main strike capabilities in the US arsenal. And we're only a month into the war. Here's a nice diagram of the various air defense systems used by the US and Israel. The ones running critically low at the moment are the Patriot system, THAAD, SM-2, SM-3, SM-6, Arrow 2, Arrow 3, and David Sling. Son of a... That's when you might be wondering, how could this be happening? Well, we have no choice to go through every of these weapon systems. We can observe this ammo shortage crisis firsthand with Patriot interceptors. On the 17th of March, the Time reported, in the first few days of the Iran war, Middle Eastern countries burned through more than 800 Patriot missiles. In comparison, Ukraine received around 1,000 Patriot missiles since the start of its war against Russia. Now, the problem is that Lockheed Martin, the American defense manufacturer making these Patriot missiles, only produced 620 PAC-3 MSE interceptors in 2025. A year's worth of production just gone like that within 2-3 days. It's as crazy as you taking your yearly salary and just spending it all in one weekend. Anyway, now the Gulf countries are obviously running dry in interceptors, mostly because they're total noobs. Can you imagine if they fired Patriot missiles on full auto mode at decoys? Yeah, well, that's exactly what they did. I'm not kidding. You see, in the first 48 hours, Iran fired over 1,200 projectiles at these 5 Arab countries, but 70% of them were drones. These saturation attacks aimed to overwhelm enemy air defenses and drain their interceptors. And it worked. According to the Foreign Policy Research Institute, Gulf partners fired nearly double the number of Patriot interceptors as US forces. Is it because they had to deal with more targets? Or is there another explanation, such as the complete lack of training and trigger control? I'll let you think about it for a second. Well, according to the Time, the Gulf troops left their batteries to take cover and the Patriots fire in automatic mode. In comparison, the Ukrainian crews of Patriot missile launchers stay at the controls and fire manually. A Ukrainian officer was astonished to hear reports of Gulf states firing as many as 8 Patriot interceptor missiles, each worth more than $3 million, at a single target, even using the expensive systems to hit cheap drones.
Oh, okay.
I mean, this is extremely interesting. You can provide the same weapon system to 2 different countries, and the result will be vastly different. According to the Payne Institute, in the first 96 hours, the Gulf partners fired 618 of their 4,000 Patriot PAC-3 interceptors, or 15% of their total inventory. To no surprise, the US is now stonewalling requests by Gulf states to replenish interceptors because they know they'll just burn through the ammo within a couple days. And also because, let's say, another Middle Eastern state gets priority. By day 16 of the war, this figure increased to an estimated 1,285, or a third of all their Patriot missiles. In the end, we can believe that after a month of war against Iran, only about half of their inventory remains. At this rate, in a month from now, between the end of April and early May, the Gulf countries will have officially run out of Patriot interceptors. According to the CSIS, the US Patriot inventory was about 2,000 units, of which 1,600 were the most modern PAC-3 MSE variant. However, 2 weeks into the war, US Patriot batteries fired approximately 400 interceptors, 20% of the country's arsenal. At the current rate, the United States still have 4 months until 50% of its stock is depleted. Meanwhile, after a month of war, Saudi Arabia only expanded about 8% of its Patriot interceptors. So I think it's realistic to think that they could sell some of their extra stockpiles to the UAE, for example. But of course, at a premium. At this point, the entire coalition still has about 6,000 Patriot interceptors, down 30% since the start of the war. They will have to make it stretch because that's all they'll have access to this year. It's like when you're squeezing the last bits of toothpaste until your next pay. The only problem is that you don't know when you're actually going to get paid. And now to add more fuel to this huge ammo shortage crisis, Ukraine is still asking for more Patriot missiles as well. From a geopolitical standpoint, the US is getting humiliated. And you know it's bad when it's Ukraine, a country already at war, that agrees to help the Gulf countries. Officially, Ukraine deployed 200 experts to reduce wasteful use of expensive air defense systems like Patriots. In other words, Ihor and Volodymyr are going to operate Patriot launchers, while Mohammed is going to the back seat. But that's not all. On the 26th of March, Swiss media SRF reported an insane scandal. USA circumvents Swiss payment freeze for Patriot air defense system. Essentially, what happened is that, as a leverage, Switzerland stopped payments for the Patriot air defense system in fall because delivery has been delayed for years. So in response, the US just accelerated the production rate to fulfill the contract. No. The US just seized the funds Switzerland paid for the F-35s, which they probably won't get either. Oh, look, a super stealthy Swiss F-35. That's right, they got scammed. The gangs of New York strike again. The story of the Patriot missiles is a complete clusterfuck, and that's why you should always diversify your portfolio. So to fill in the gaps caused by the lack of available Patriot missiles, the UAE ordered Cheonggung-2 surface-to-air missiles from South Korea. That's because in January 2022, the UAE signed a $3.5 billion deal with South Korea for 10-fold Cheonggung-2 batteries. But as of 2026, only 2 batteries were operational. The South Korean launchers fired 60 interceptors during the recent Iranian missile and drone attacks, allegedly achieving a high success rate. And this depleted some of their initial loads. That's why on the 9th of March, a UAE Air Force C-17A Globemaster III airlifted 30 interceptors from Daegu Air Base in South Korea to Al Dhafra Air Base in the United Arab Emirates. The main reason behind this purchase is cost effectiveness. Cheonggung-2 interceptors are reported to cost roughly 1/3 to 1/4 the price of Patriot PAC-3 missiles, while offering comparable, if not superior performance in the medium range tier. But once again, with all these high-tech weapons, inventory is very limited. Beyond Patriot missile batteries, the air defense architecture is further reinforced by the Terminal High Altitude Area Defense, or THAAD, providing exoatmospheric interception capabilities against high-altitude ballistic threats. 4 days into the war, partner nation THAAD interceptors were depleted by over a third. 16 days in, the Gulf countries expanded a total of 120 talons, which is another terminology for THAAD interceptors. And by now, we can believe they burned through 80% of their inventory, with only an estimated 34 units remaining.
Fuck.
Iran is laughing. One big missile barrage, and it's over. Now, the problem for the Gulf countries is that THAAD interceptors are also used by Israel, whose batteries fired 22 missiles, meaning they depleted 46% of the Israeli inventory by day 16. And you can imagine the situation now. The US military deployed in the region is not in a better shape. Last June, CSIS estimated 534 THAAD interceptors in stock prior to the 12-day war, during which more than 150 were used. So realistically, we could stand at about 380 units available before Operation Epic Fury. Now, by day 16, analysts believe the US fired 198 talons, thus depleting the US arsenal by up to 50%. After a month of war, we could be standing at a 70% depletion rate, with only an estimated 114 THAAD interceptors left, and in the best case scenario, 230. Considering you need 48 interceptors to reload the battery, is not looking good. The disaster is exacerbated by the fact that Lockheed Martin's output is estimated at only 96 units per year.
Oh shit, here we go again.
That's approximately what the US fired in the first 4 days of the war. 1 year of extremely expensive ammo just gone like that. This is not sustainable. And this makes me reflect really hard on the US doctrine regarding its air defense. But in this case, ammunition is not even the only concern. Iranian forces skillfully managed to destroy one ANTPY-2 battery radar in Jordan, which is the core sensor of a THAAD battery, and severely damaged 3 others, one near Prince Sultan Air Base in Saudi Arabia and 2 in the UAE. With only 8 THAAD batteries worldwide, losing radar coverage on 4 of them significantly strains the US layered missile defense network across the entire region. As you can imagine, such radars are not repaired overnight, and building new ones will take years. That's why on the 12th of March, footage shows all 6 THAAD launchers being removed from the US base in Seongju, South Korea, being redeployed to the Middle East. The South Korean government was against it, but let's just say they didn't have much say. This is exactly where South Korea was sitting that night. US warships are also in deep trouble. The US Navy's Aegis combat system uses 3 main missiles: RIM-66 Standard Missile 2 to shoot down aircraft and cruise missiles, RIM-161 Standard Missile 3 to hit ballistic missiles high up in space, and the multi-role RIM-164 Standard Missile 6, which is used against cruise missiles and drones, as well as against ballistic missiles in their terminal phase. Like American seamen say, nothing beats a good rim job at Mach 3, am I right? Lololololol. Yeah, let's just say American sailors are also trigger happy. One Ukrainian officer told the Time, for example, they used SM-6 missiles from a ship, a very good anti-missile missile. This SM-6 cost about $6 million, and they used it to shoot down a $70,000 Shaheed. That's literally the definition of overkill. So the Americans are laughing at Gulf countries, but look, they're doing the same thing. That's when we learned that the US Navy fired 310 missiles by day 4 in the war against Iran. 16 days in, 431 were expanded, meaning that by now, a month after the start of Operation Epic Fury, US warships depleted just over 20% of the total inventory. Now, at this rate, the US Navy can stretch its stockpiles until October 2026. But you know what? It wouldn't be a problem if the US had infinite amount of ammunition. Once again, the problem is that Raytheon currently only produces 125 SM-6s per year.
And it's gone.
On the first days of fighting. From a historical perspective, it's extremely interesting because the same thing happened during World War I. None of the European armies expected the war to last years. So within weeks, all armies had to ration their artillery shells. The Gulf countries are running out of air defense interceptors. Same thing for US forces deployed in the Middle East. And to make matters even worse, Iran's missile campaign also depleted a large number of Israel's interceptors. While Iron Dome stocks remain operationally viable, the same cannot be said for the David Sling and Arrow systems. Stockpiles of the respective interceptors are now running critically low. According to the FPRI, on the 28th of February, Israel had 250 David Sling Thunder missiles in reserve. However, by day 16, the Payne Institute reported 135 Stunners to have been launched, or 54% of the total. The situation is even worse for the Arrow system. 96 hours in, Israeli forces burned through 80 of its stock of 150 Arrow 2 and Arrow 3 anti-ballistic missiles. I mean, look at this. 6 Arrow 3 interceptors got dribbled by one Iranian missile. By day 16, Payne Institute reported that Israel fired 122 Arrow interceptors, thus expanding over 80% of its pre-operation inventory. You can imagine the situation now after 4 weeks of fighting. Yet apparently the IDF says it's not facing any shortage of interceptors.
Right.
The cope is too real. They smacked the bee's nest and now they're wondering why they keep getting stung. Israeli defense experts stated that Israel needs significantly more Arrow 3 interceptors. And even if production is ramped up now, what you are firing today is what was ordered 2 or 3 years ago. With Iron Dome and Arrow systems running critically low on ammunition, air defense units must prioritize engagements and selectively target only the highest threat inbound missiles. Like here on the 21st of March, as an Iranian missile plunged down on Dimona without any Israeli interceptors to challenge it. Ultimately, this US air defense capabilities are being overstretched. They will have to find a way to scramble stuff left and right to keep protecting their Israeli ally at all costs. As you can see, the US is facing a costly attrition dynamic in defense, where cheap Iranian missiles and long-range drones are bringing Western interceptors to critical depletion. It's clear that US and Israeli leaders did not expect Iran to sustain the battle for so long. And now they're trapped in a flight forward type of situation. Well, it turns out now they have the same problem for offensive weapons, because the United States is also confronting a growing strategic dilemma concerning the availability of its offensive weapons and strike capabilities. First, there's the disaster situation with the Gerald R. Ford. We're talking about plumbing issues followed by internal fires. Instead of participating in Operation Epic Fury, the aircraft carrier is now arriving in Croatia for repairs that could take weeks to months. But that's not the only problem the US Navy has to deal with. For example, before Operation Epic Fury, the total number of Tomahawk cruise missiles was estimated at 3,200 units, including those aboard destroyers and submarines. By day 16, 535 Tomahawks had been fired, or 17% of the inventory. The Financial Times reported it's a massive expenditure of Tomahawks. The Navy will be feeling this expenditure for several years. Did you hear that? Years! You know what? China is laughing. That's when on the 27th of March, The Independent declared, the US has fired 850 Tomahawk missiles into Iran. That means 1 month into the war, the US Navy burned through 25% of the country's Tomahawk stockpiles. Just like with air defense interceptors, the dilemma is that the US Navy only acquired a very little number of new cruise missiles. Pentagon documents show the Navy bought 68 Tomahawks in fiscal year 2023, 34 in 2024, 22 through 2025, and plans for 57 in 2026. Now check this, in 4 years, the US Navy acquired 181 Tomahawk cruise missiles. And at the same time, by day 4 of the war against Iran, they had already expended 375 units. As you can understand, this would take several years to replenish.
Madness.
Now let's move on to the US Air Force. B-52 bombers have been executing strike sorties almost exclusively armed with AGM-158 JASSMs, a munition that stands for Joint Air-to-Surface Standoff Missile. These precision-guided munitions exceed 1,000 kilometers in range and serve as the primary subsonic air-launched cruise missile within the U.S. arsenal. Now it's estimated that before Operation Epic Fury, the U.S. military had 3,500 JASSMs in stock, a relatively large inventory, mostly thanks to sizable Air Force purchases in the last decade. Thing is, even these munitions got used up pretty fast. You see, the B-52 can carry 20 JASSMs at a time, the B-1 24, and the B-2 can be armed with 16 JASSMs. This means by day 16, in only 2 weeks of operations, 912 AGM-152 JASSMs were reportedly dropped on Iran, or 26% of the US inventory. And a month into the war, we could be looking at a 45 depletion rate. As for US ground forces, they're going through a critical ammunition shortage in regards to HIMARS, particularly with respect to the MGM-140 ATACMS tactical ballistic missiles it employs. If after 94 hours only 135 ATACMS were launched, by day 16, 912 of the 3,500 ATACMS were burned through, or about 25% of the inventory. Other sources like FPRI reported that within the same time frame, US stockpiles of ground-launched ATACMS and the new PRSM ballistic missiles were depleted by a third. Notice how ATACMS missiles were used to compensate for the decrease of US airstrikes against Iran. But no matter what they do, logistics doesn't lie. At this rate, the US will run out of ATACMS missiles by mid-May. The worst is that ATACMS production ended in 2007, while the ATACMS successor, the PRSM, is only being produced at a rate of 60 units per fiscal year. Within 2 weeks of war, US forces expanded 15 years worth of ammunition. Yeah, this is not gonna work. In conclusion, the US blitzkrieg failed. US military planners expected a short and decisive aerial campaign, using their technological superiority, but it failed. Inventory for dozens of missile systems have been depleted, and now the US is stuck. Iran can produce over 100 offensive missiles per month, and it has an inventory of tens of thousands of long-distance drones. And that's without taking into account possible Russian help. That production rate surpasses the manufacturing output of the dozen critical weapon systems in the US arsenal that are currently being depleted by the ongoing conflict. Even worse, the draining of critical systems and high-end munitions is particularly affecting US positioning in the Indo-Pacific region. The tragedy is that towards the end of Operation Prosperity Guardian against the Houthis in Yemen around April 2025, the acting chief of naval operations, Admiral James Kilby, already warned that the munitions industrial base must be revamped to upkeep the US magazine depth for a future protracted conflict. And as always, nothing was done. And now it could be too late. And like Brendan Weichart wrote on 1945, given this tragic reality, Iran can produce missiles at a greater rate than the Americans and their allies can build interceptors to stop them. He added, in short, the Iran war is exposing a brutal truth that Washington has spent decades avoiding, that America's military is optimized for short bursts of overwhelming force, rather than sustained industrial warfare against a determined, well-prepared adversary. This means the US will either have to stop this war now and take the L, or double down. We know Trump. We know Trump. On the 25th of March, Reuters wrote, Pentagon says it will ramp up war supplies with defense companies. Yet 3 weeks ago, on March 6, Breaking Defense also reported defense companies to quadruple production of exquisite weapons, where Trump met with 7 execs of 7 defense contractors, and they have agreed to quadruple production of the exquisite class weaponry, in that we want to reach as rapidly as possible the highest levels of quantity. The problem is that the US needs the ammo right now, not in a year. And hold on, the strange part is that expansion began 3 months prior to the meeting. So if I understand properly, the president of the United States is now publicly admitting that 3 months ago, he made a secret deal with America's defense contractors to quadruple weapons production before we even knew there was going to be a war with Iran. Anyway, it must be a strange coincidence, right? As of now, this means the US military will have to adapt and compensate by using low-cost systems. such as the Sting interceptor drone developed by Ukraine. Same idea in terms of strike capabilities. Just like Russia, the US might need to find ways to leverage vast existing stockpiles of cheap munitions, like GBU-31 JDAMs and GBU-39 small diameter bombs, and find a way for them to replace ballistic and cruise missiles. One thing is for sure, it's easy to start a war, but nobody knows how and when it will end. That's all I have for you today. See you in the next one.
So this area is called the Naut Hovav facility. Naut Hovav was previously also called Ramat Hovav, and it has it's a complex. It's Israel's main hazardous waste disposal facility. It has multiple plants inside it, including the Aviv recycling plant that specializes in recycling used plastic bottles, the Adama Agricultural Solutions that develops plant protection products, the TAS Certificates, which is a subsidiary of Elbit, a very well-known company that deals with the Israeli military industrial complex, Orot Yosef, which is a power plant that manufactures electricity through natural gas, Elkon Recycling Center, which provides waste management services, Energix Renewable Energies, Ecosol Israel, Gas Dal, Gas Technologies, alongside dozens of other companies operate there in this complex, a huge complex that, again, Iran attacked, and they destroyed a very large chunk of this location. Now, because it deals with so many things to do with chemicals, Israel was very worried. As a matter of fact, that warning came very quickly inside the country. Now all residents in and around that facility, in that location, are only going out with masks. Israel officially said a couple of things about the possibility of hazardous materials being released, as we can see here. Officials checking the possibility of hazardous material leak at factory hit by Iranian missiles. Public told to stay away. Now, this is what they officially said in one of the media outlets, but the reality on the ground is that they immediately implemented severe measures. No one is walking surrounding these areas freely. Everyone has to be wearing masks. The leak already happened. People who were working there already reported smells of toxic, hazardous things, similar to the ammonia location that was targeted in the Haifa oil and refinery and petrochemical refineries that Iran attacked not long ago as well. So there is a layer here, level that we reached in this conflict where the strategic and very hazardous locations are starting to get hit. This could lead to lots of problems inside of Israel. Of course, it could lead to people getting sick, more cancer rates. You can lead to deaths. You can lead to so many things if this situation continues and if Israel isn't really able to control the situation. I mean, the strikes were severe and the damage was severe as well. And from an Israeli perspective, they're not used to this level of attack. The reports that came spoke about 2 strikes. One of them was the beginning strike on the location. Then another strike took place in that same location. Both of them caused severe damage. As a matter of fact, there was actually a report coming on Turkish TV that spoke about this with the thumbnails of subtitles. So I'll share this video with you from the scene, and how things looked like behind the attack, because the military was there, the rescue services were there, so many emergency bodies were there in the scene. And of course, this led to a lot of chaos. Let's have a look at the report that spoke about this from the scene and what was the situation exactly like when that attack happened.
Ramat Hovo tesisi vuruldu az önce, yani yaklaşık 45 dakika önce ve bir alarm durumu var. Şu anda da bakın siren sesini duyuyorsunuzdur, ekrana geliyordur. Bakın karşıda o sanayi sitesindeki yangına müdahale için gelen ekipler şu anda bölgede alarm durumuna geçmiş durumdalar. Sirenler çaldığı için de bakın yere uzandılar ve olası bir füze saldırısına yönelik de kendilerini şimdi korumaya çalışıyorlar. Tabii bakın yoğun duman çıkışını da göreceksiniz az sonra. Öncelikle tabii ki Cüneyt Ali Özel sizlere şu anki alarm durumunu göstersin. Bakın polis ekipleri, yine özel kıyafetli görevliler, yani kimyasal madde sızıntısı tehlikesi nedeniyle çok sayıda da ekip bölgeye gönderildi. Onlar özel kıyafetleriyle, özel donanımlarıyla buraya geldiler ve şu anda adım adım işte o sanayi sitesinin, sanayi tesisinin bulunduğu yere doğru gidiyorlardı ki bir anda bir İran'dan misilleme dalgası daha başladı ki Ramat Hovov sanayi tesisinin vurulduğu bilgisi paylaşılmıştı ki gelen görüntülerde de yoğun bir duman çıkışı vardı. Sonrasında İsrailli yetkililerden gelen açıklama buranın balistik bir füzeyle değil, balistik füzenin havada imha edilmesi sonucunda, evet bakın bir patlama, evet bir patlama sesi duyuldu. Evet bakın, bakın bu tarafa düştü, evet. Bu bölge sanayi, evet şu anda duman yükseliyor, görüyorum. Bakın şu anda ikinci, bakın hemen göstersin Cüneyt Ali Orazal sizlere. Gelen füze bakın hemen karşıdaki işte yüksek gerilim hatlarının bulunduğu noktaya düştü. Burası geçtiğimiz günlerde de vurulan Dimona'ya yakın, Dimona nükleer tesisinin de bulunduğu noktaya yakın bir yer. Aynı zamanda Arat, Berşeva'ya çok yakın bir yer burası. Az önce Ramatovov sanayi tesisi, sanayi sitesi vurulmuştu. Sanayi tesisinde bir kimyasal sızıntıdan bahsediliyordu. O sırada yeniden ikinci kez alarm durumuna geçildi ve İran'dan gelen füzeler de hemen bakın o tesisin tam karşısındaki noktaya isabet etti ve şu anda da yoğun duman çıkışını görebiliyorsunuz karşıdan. Evet, ard arda saldırılar İran'dan ve İsrail kentleri tehdit altındaydı. Şimdi geçtiğimiz günlerde en sarsıcı saldırıların yaşandığı Dimona ve aynı zamanda Arat ve bu saldırılar daha yankıları sürerken şimdi de aynı bölgeye, yakın bir bölgeye düşen bir başka İran füzesi. Bakın yoğun duman çıkışını göstereceğiz sizlere. Evet, bakın karşı tarafta işte Ramat Hovov sanayi tesisindeki yoğun duman çıkışını görüyorsunuz. Yetkililerden gelen ilk açıklama bir kimyasal sızıntı olduğu yönündeydi. Sonrasında dediler ki herhangi bir tehlike olmayabilir ama tekrardan alarm durumuna geçildi ve ard arda işte siren sesleri ve sonrasında da patlama sesleri duyuldu ve bir başka nokta daha vuruldu. Şu anda bölgede ekiplerin de çalışmaları devam ediyor. Evet, yoğun.
So that was the report that came directly from the scene, and in it he spoke about another explosion and secondary explosions happening, and that indeed happened. It didn't just happen, it was actually recorded too. This was one of the videos that showed a secondary explosion in the facility as the fire was breaking out and after it started to spread even further.
אני אומר עוד פעם לבקש, מי שנמצא כאן בסמוך לאותו מפעל, שמזהה כאן את העשן, להסתגר בבית, מי שנמצא כרגע מבחינתנו, לפי המלצה שלנו, במשטרת ישראל, אנחנו סגרנו כרגע כביש 40, לפי המלצה שלנו, במשטרת ישראל, אנחנו סגרנו כרגע את הכביש, ואנחנו מונעים פגישה של אנשים. אני אומר
And of course, there were more videos of the scenes following the strike, as we can see here too. And more damage, as we can see in many of the images that came afterwards as well. So what was this attack about exactly, and what did Iran say? Where is this going to lead to? Clearly, we're seeing a pattern of escalation only. We're not seeing any sort of de-escalation, despite all of the talks that are coming from the American president about a potential de-escalation. And we will talk about, of course, the statements that are coming from Iran that leave no doubt that the region is going to witness more escalation coming very soon, and the United States is indeed preparing for that. What did Iran say? Iran said a couple of things in relation to this attack. This attack came in what Iran describes as the 86th wave. So Iran carried out the 86th wave, and they made a statement as well in relation to that. They said that they targeted the industrial city in Beersheba and Israeli sites in the Negev. They announced that they targeted the industrial city as response to the Zionist American aggression against the country's industrial facilities. So again, Israel and the United States begin, Iran retaliates, but the thing here with the Iranian retaliation, by the way, in many cases, it's harder than the actual attack. And that is something that Iran is doing more and more lately to show both Israel and the United States that the cost of their aggression against Iran is extremely heavy. And that's what Iran is trying to do. That's why they had the action in the Hormuz Strait very quickly. That's why they targeted every American base in the region. That's why they've done all of these things. What did they also say in this report here? They confirmed that the operation caused a series of explosions in the industrial city, as we saw, of course, leading to a near total power outage in the area. The operation also included targeting Israeli military sites in the Negev desert. In detail, the Guard targeted the HQ of the Northern Regional Command, in addition to security and government facilities in occupied Jerusalem and Tel Aviv, in parallel with the aerospace force targeting the industrial facilities linked with the United States in the Gulf region. They also said that the operation was carried out using ballistic missiles and dive drones too.
It's kind of like so many other things in technology, if you think about it, the history of technology. There were a time when, a computer was the size of a building. Literally, like the first computers were like a building, and people would they had plugs, and some of them had vacuum tubes or plugs where you plug this plug out and plug it in over here and take one out and plug it in. These things were gigantic, right? Then you had, they were big desktop, then laptop, and then now you've got watches and tiny little computer disks with incredible computing power, right? So what happens with technology? One of the things is it gets smaller and more powerful. The smaller the technology is and the more powerful it is, the more convenient it is, the cheaper it gets. I just sold my house and moved out God knows I'm, haven't even started looking for another house yet, but I sold my house. And I had a TV in there that a friend had given me. And it was a flat screen TV. It was very, very heavy. I gave it away when I moved. I didn't feel like moving with deal with this thing. I had it in my back room. But here's the thing about it. This guy gave me this TV. When he bought it, it was a big flat screen TV, probably 50, 60 inches, right? When he bought that TV, it cost $25,000. That's what a flat screen TV cost, that size, when he bought it. And when he bought it, the picture was incredible. Well, the picture was still good. It had a good flat screen TV, not a bad, but, not comparison to the OLED things and ULED and he led and I led, I don't even understand the technology now, but they couldn't compare to this stuff. But when it first came out, it was big, it was heavy, but it was 25 grand, right? And now you can get a better TV than that for $400, literally $400 or $500. You can get beaten that TV by a long shot. Okay, so technology changes, it gets smaller, it gets cheaper, it gets less expensive, things of that nature. Now, if you still want to buy flat screen TVs for $25,000 and you just got money to throw away, you can probably find one. Go to a Bang & Olufsen store or something like that, right? And I mean, if you just want to spend that money, or if you got some sucker, if you're a country and you're making big screen TVs and you can find some sucker that'll buy a big screen TV from you for $25,000, you ought to make it and sell it to them. As P.T. Barnum said, it's a crime against God and nature to allow a sucker to keep his money. So here's the reality. When the situation calls for it, somebody can sell you anything. I know someone who went to this mall in Northern Virginia, where a lot of rich people go. And they told me that in that mall, and how these kind of places, there was like socks and belts and scarves. It were like $700, $1,000 for sock, a belt, a scarf. Now, is that better than one that costs $25? Is that better than one that's going to keep you warmer? Is it going to look better? Whatever. I don't know. Is anybody going to know? What's the point of conspicuous consumption? You got to tell somebody, guess how much I paid for this scarf, right? I mean, watches, you got people who have watches that pay 10, 20, 50, 100,000, a million. Philippe Patel, you know what I mean? Whatever it is. Patek, watches that cost millions of dollars, right? This is my G-Shock. It costs like $300. And that's a lot for me for a watch. I got $300, $400, $500. I got a couple of watches that are expensive. To me, $300, $400, $500 is a lot of watches. But this one has all kinds of stuff. It's one of these survival watches, right? It has a GPS, it has an altimeter, you name it, right? It was like $350 or something like that. That's a lot, but I ain't trying to show everybody off. Hey, it's nice. It's a lot of watch to me, right? Because all I need to do is tell time, and maybe a few hours. It'll tell you when the sun comes up and goes down, all that kind of crap, right? Automatically adjust the time zones and all that. $350, in order to do that. That's a lot of money to a guy like me. So my point is that whatever price you want to sell somebody, somebody will pay. What is it when the teacher is ready? When the student is ready, the teacher will appear. If you have a market to buy something at a particular price, somebody will buy it. Now the question is it effective? Or is it any better than what someone else has? Is this better than a watch that costs $80,000? Well, it all depends. If I get out of my car and I mark my GPS spot and I walk through the woods for an hour and I'm walking along a fishing creek and I'm doing this and I'm like, oh crap, I don't know where I am. Bingo. I bring back that and guess what? It'll direct me back. It has a compass in it. Oh, well, I was walking, whatever degree it is, and I can reverse that and get back to my car. So you paid $80,000 for your car, for your watch, and they find your bones in the woods somewhere with coyotes gnawing on it because you were lost. And I paid $350 for my watch. Now I can get the hell back to my car and live. That's the difference, right? So my point is this. I think what's going on in the United States is that we are running into a crisis of neoliberalism in a lot of ways, right? In every neoliberalism conspicuous consumption, corruption in every facet of our lives. And one of the facets that we're running into right now is military. Because while other countries, like, first of all, because we're threatening them, let's start there. We're literally threatening people, right? We're like, we're going to come over there and we're going to take your oil, whatever you got. And so you got another country saying, oh crap, they're going to come take our oil. We don't want them to take our oil. Whatever are we going to do? We're going to stop from taking our oil. We got to do something. So what do? The government says, first of all, if we're going to stop these Yankees from taking our oil, we got to take profit out of this. So instead of having Lockheed Martin or General Dynamics, the government is going to own the company that makes this stuff. Why? Because we want to make it as cheaply as possible. And we want to make it as many as we can, as cheap as we can, as effective as we can. We can't afford to be paying exorbitant prices for stuff because the Yankees are going to come kill us and take our oil, right? So they have a motivation that we don't have. Meanwhile, in the neoliberal economy, everything's about profit. So we're like, we're going to build whatever. So Iran says we need a missile. We need lots of them. We need it to be made cheaply. We need it to work real well. So let's do it. Where the US says we need a missile, we need it to work real well, we need to be real high tech. But there's somebody in that chain saying, well, we don't need it to be made cheaply. We need to make it as expensive as possible. You have a chain. You have people at the top saying, I need it. You have people all in between that chain saying, I need to get some profit out of this, right? You want to get the contract, then the lobbyist got to give me some money. And I got to pay the lobbyist. The lobbyist has to donate to the member of Congress. Then we got to do expensive things. You know, one of the things they do with the F-35 program is they build it all over the place. So every congressional district will build something. One district is responsible for the paint, the other the tires, the other the windscreen, the other the whatever, metal, right? And they do that and spread it all over the place. Why? So that all the members of Congress will have jobs in their area and they'll all vote for it. And then they charge some ungodly price. Whether it works it's not made. It's like I say about food in America. It's not food, it's a product. It's not made for you to eat. It's not made for you to be healthy. It's not made for its nutritional value. It is made to make profit. It is made for advertisement purposes. Sometimes the color, yes, let's put this food color in it. The food color causes cancer, but it'll make it look bright and green. So people will buy it and eat it. They'll be like, "Wow, it sure looks good. I wonder why it turns my tongue green." Nah, that's funny. Look, kid, daddy's tongue's green. Nah, that's cancer. Because the stuff that turns your tongue green gave you cancer, right? But it sold the product. It's about making money. Hey, if you happen to die, yeah, that's the way it goes, right? So when you look at our military-industrial supply chain, our military-industrial contracts, our military-industrial incentives, there's an incentive to number one, make profits for everybody, all up and down the line. Not just the end company. Everybody got to get their fair share. Everybody's got to get a cut. Right? The member of Congress got to get a cut. The lobbyist has to get a cut. The general in the Pentagon, he's got to get his cut. Then when he retires, he gets a cushy job with Lockheed Martin, and he gets another cut there. Everybody's getting a cut. You got to grease some palms. You got to have some payoffs, some payola, right? All that money's got to come from somewhere. So then the missile is insignificant. You could do a picture of a missile. Who cares what the missile looks like? Who cares if it works? Who cares if you update it? Who cares? Who cares? Who cares? You want the missile to have a cool name like the Tomahawk or Hellfire, right? The only thing the Native Americans get is names of weapons that kill people. The Apache, the Tomahawk. Hey, what about the Native Americans where like 30% of them on their actual reservations don't have running water? Can we do something about that? No, we can't, but we can sell some Apaches and Tomahawks. They get their names on the killing machines that are slaughtering men, women, and children. Aren't they fortunate? In honor of the people who were slaughtered, at Little Bighorn, for God's sake. But at any rate, my point is this. Little Bighorn, Custer was slaughtered at Little Bighorn. Let's go with the Trail of Tears. You get my point. You get my point, what I'm getting at here, before we even get into the Iran war, and that is there's a dysfunctional system in the neoliberal capitalist system, in this money laundering, in this lying, stealing, cheating system that we have that's nothing but profit driven. There is a dysfunction there, and that dysfunction doesn't make weapons. That's not what they're here to do. That dysfunction makes profit. Meanwhile, what have the Russians done? The Russians have said, you know what? We got to be able to fight. So what we're going to do is we're going to take these companies and we're going to put them under the government. And we're going to have a National Security Council, and we're going to put a person from the government in charge of weapons, everything. This is going to be a government thing. And, you know, believe it or not, when you look at the Russians' chain of military chain, one of the things that they have, this is interesting, it's the ability to adapt. See, when it comes to fighting and when it comes to military conflict, yes, it's important to have the latest weapons. Absolutely, it's important to have the latest weapons. But there's something else that's critical, and that is the ability to adapt on a changing technological battlefield. So the Russians have these, have a chain, right? Wherein what happens is these soldiers on the field, as they face whatever it is they faced. Oh gosh, we got a new kind of drone, a new kind of net, a new kind of this, a new kind of that. Oh, we're having a problem. Our drones aren't working because of this, that. They're jamming them, they're whatever, right? They have a chain of people who they then say, here's the technological problem we have. Those people then go up the chain to the people in the military industrial complex and say, the man on the ground, right? And in some instances, woman, the soldier on the ground has a problem. And they've told us what their problem is. And we need a solution. And the people in the military, they have people in their military industrial complex whose job is, as quickly as possible, to come up with a solution. We got drones. We need to jam the drones. They're jamming our drones. We need to get around drones that are being jammed. Oh, what are we going to do? We're going to run fiber optic cable to drones. Great, then we need lots of fiber optic cable. Okay, we need a supply system that gives us kilometer after kilometer after kilometer of fiber optic cable, because you can't jam fiber optic cable. Basically, you jam my drones, I'll hardwire them. But how does that work? Because you have a system in place that's not there to make a product. To make a product and to make a profit. It's there to address the technological hurdles that the man on the battlefield faces. And it's effective, it's efficient. But it's just not, I'm not saying they're perfect. I'm not saying people don't get paid off. I don't know. Maybe somebody gets some loot here and there. I'm just saying it's a different system. When the government owns it, it's different. And as I understand it also, and as a person who's in Russia right now for that matter, there are a lot of people in Russia who work in the military industrial complex, particularly people who work, on the lines and things like that, but all over, who feel like they're doing their patriotic duty, who are like, my country's at war and I got to work long hours. Sure, they get paid and overtime and this and that, but I got to work long hours because I'm contributing to the war effort. So you get that too. Particularly, remember, one of the things I talk about when it comes to war is, in order to get buy-in for the people, they have to believe it's a just war. They have to believe it's a just cause. They have to believe that their government is at war to protect themselves, to do whatever reason it is, but they have to feel like we are under siege and my government's fighting to protect me and my way of life and my culture. If you got that, you got buy-in, people are going to work long hours. They're going to do their best to produce whatever it is they got to produce, because they feel like this tank I'm building is going to the battlefield and I got to support my men and women, my men and women on the battlefield. And it is my belief, based on my experience here in Russia, that that is the case. I'm not saying you got to agree with it or not agree with it. This is not about making a point of who's good, bad, right, wrong, or indifferent. I'm just giving you the system. You do with it what you want. Now, one of the things that happened here recently, and this is interesting because what we had from a military perspective, particularly with the U.S. when it came to years, and let's face it, the U.S. was the one that was starting all these wars. What you had was, and this is something very bad for the U.S. It wasn't good for the U.S. And let me tell you a story. I used to like to play pool. I'm not saying I was good. I'm not saying I was bad, but I could play. You know, I didn't embarrass myself. If I played with okay pool players, if I played with really good pool players, I would get my butt kicked. But if I played with average pool players, I could hang in there. Sometimes I could do pretty good, sometimes not. But I had fun. I didn't play to be Minnesota Fats. I played to have fun. But I found something out. When I played with average pool players, I didn't really improve. And when I played with people that kicked my butt, I was better. It forces you to focus and play it a different way because you know you only got a couple misses. You know, if you miss a couple shots, this guy's running the table on you. So you got to focus every shot because there ain't no room for missing because you're going to get beat quick. And it forces a different level of focus on you, right? When you're playing against people that are good, you're playing basketball. I used to play a lot of ball. That was my game, right? Played in leagues and all that. You play against really, really good ball players and it helps your game. The US got accustomed to playing against people who were not capable of defending themselves. We were attacking Libya. We were attacking Afghanistan. We were attacking Iraq. I mean, Iraq had a lot of stuff, but it was from the 1950s, right? You know, what was it, S2 or something, whatever, S-200 air defense system. They didn't have much. And so what happened was the U.S. got accustomed to beating up on, you know, little old ladies in tennis shoes, right? We got accustomed to beating up on people who weren't capable of defending themselves, who really did not have effective military technology and who had old stuff that they really didn't know how to use and oftentimes didn't work. They were poor. And we go in there and we beat up on Iraq or Libya or Afghanistan and still lose in the long run. And then we brag about how great we were. Look what we did. We defeated Libya and Iraq and this and that. Well, okay, we weren't really fighting against a modern army, but we would fight against somebody who didn't have effective air defense system. And then we would say, we rule the skies. We have effective airspace domination and we bomb anyone, anytime we damn well please, and there's nothing they can do about it. But they didn't really have much in the way of air defense. So they couldn't shoot down our missiles. They couldn't shoot down our planes. We just flew around and bombed them and bragged about how good we were because we weren't playing anybody that was any good. We were playing schlubs. And I mean, nothing against these armies, but they were poor countries. They did not have the capability to defend themselves properly. They just didn't have the military capability. And so what happened? We beat up on them years. And we used super carriers. Why? They didn't have effective surface to ship missiles or ship to ship missiles. They didn't have navies most of the time. So we'd bring in a super carrier, which was effectively a mobile base, right? A super carrier. We'd sit it offshore. Nobody's shooting at it. And we'd fly planes in and bomb and come back, and they're sitting out there on the super carrier drinking a cup of coffee in the evening. Fly off, bomb somebody over airspace, uncontested, come back, land their planes, drink a cup of coffee. That's all that was. That was a big deal. What'd you do? Flew a couple missions and came back. Say, somebody bring me a hot coffee. Let's play some, I don't know, poker tonight. That's what they did. Pizza, cake, gravy. And these super carriers were giant, but there was nobody to go against them. Okay. So I don't know how much war technology changed, how much we got fat and tired, how much we went up against people who weren't capable. I suppose it was a combination of all of the above. It was a combination of we were fighting people who weren't capable of defending themselves. And we got lazy. That our technology got old, but we didn't need to upgrade the technology because it turned a big profit and they weren't fighting anybody that could do anything with what we had. Meanwhile, Iran, North Korea, China, Russia, they had to worry about us coming to get them. So they were constantly upgrading their technology, constantly upgrading their capabilities. And here's the other part of it, and this is important. One of the things that drove our military industrial complex was aviation. Why? Because planes are really expensive, and we just made them more and more and more and more expensive. High tech and expensive. So we are going to rule the skies. That's what we're going to do. We're going to rule the skies, and we're going to make these high tech, more and more high tech, more and more expensive planes. And that's how we deliver our ordnance. We fly over you, we deliver our ordnance, and we fly back. Or we can fly standoff bombs and missiles and things like that. Okay. And I've talked about this before. You had other countries that said, well, it's expensive to build planes, so we're not going to build as many planes as they are. Some countries like Russia could build a lot of planes, very powerful jets and stuff. Some could build any, but still not as much as NATO. So they're like, we're not even going to try. We'll focus on air defense. So they focused on getting better air defense. That's one thing they did, focus on improving their air defense. Because they knew we wanted control over the sky so we could bomb you at will. And they were like, well, we can't let them have control over the skies because they'll bomb us at will. So we got to have good air defense. So they got their air defense acts together collectively. Russia really put out some outstanding air defense. And Iran, quite frankly, they got some Russian stuff. They got some knockoff of some Russian stuff. They've got them indigenous air defense. Then they got these man pads. Man pads are man-portable air defense systems, right? You can carry them around on your shoulder. And some of them have a sight, right? And you carry it around on your shoulder when you see the plane. And they have infrared heat detectors. You see the plane puts out heat. So instead of having to use radar, you just look when you see it, you lock in, and that plane locks in on the heat signature, and that missile goes and gets as close to the plane as it can. Then it explodes. A lot of shrapnel hits the plane, and it causes damage. Doesn't necessarily take the plane down. Maybe it does, but it damages the plane. And sometimes the plane either goes down or the plane's in a lot of trouble trying to get back. The pilot can get injured, it's shrapnel injuries and things. Blows up, you get a lot of shrapnel. And that's what you want. You want to take the plane out as best you can. So, Iran has a lot of those. I understand at one point they got like 500 from Russia, and they already had a lot of them on their own. So they're running around, and you got these guys got these shoulder-fired air defense missiles. And hey, if they see a plane, they can fire on it, and they can chase it out of there, or maybe cause some damage to it, right? They've hit things with it. So at any rate, you have, and they're cheap. So here you got a plane that costs 120, 150 million, and you got, $10,000, $20,000 air defense system shooting it down with $5,000 each missiles. That's lopsided. That's the other part of it. And that is, it costs a whole lot more for you to build that plane than it does for me to make a missile to shoot the plane down. I got the system. Once the system's set up, all I need to do is keep firing missiles. So how much does it cost per missile? And I fire 2 every time at you. What do I care? I'm trying to take your plane out. So anyway, we continue. So you see the direction I'm going. There were certain factors that made this thing lopsided already, okay? That put other countries in a position of advantage because they were operating from less expensive platforms and with a system that wasn't profit oriented, so they could knock the profit out of it. Imagine if you could buy everything you wanted at cost. Imagine if you bought shirts for whatever the company makes, it will cost to make the company, to make it. I read this thing where Nike's at one point, remember when they were doing tariffs? And Nike's, that's when they found this out. These Nike shoes that are $100 and up, basically, they weren't really worried about the tariffs because the shoes were coming over and you paid tariffs on the value of the Nike. So you're buying a pair of Air Jordans for $220, right? Came across for $20. So they paid tariffs on $20. So if it was 10%, they paid $2 tariffs. What do they care? These Nikes are coming over. These Air Jordans are hitting shores, and they got to pay a tariff on it of $2. They're paying it. They're selling it for $2.20, right? So they really didn't care because it was, 10 times the cost for profit. So what if you could have made it 100% tariffs? It wouldn't have mattered to them. They're still going to make the profit. So now they're going to make 90%, they're going to make 190% profit instead of 200% profit, right? At any rate, or 180% profit. My point being, if you're buying stuff and everything you put out, your tanks, your other things like that, you get them all at profit, you can make more of them. So you can have higher numbers, okay? Number one. Number two, the US is still focusing on surface ships, right? We've got surface ships. In the same way with aircraft, we're like, we're going to build lots of aircraft. They're very expensive. A lot of people make profit, and then we can fly over you and have air dominance. But if we don't, we're in trouble. Same with surface ships. The USS Gerald Ford was $13 billion. $13 billion for one surface ship. Now, let me read what we've got, and you might have heard about it. Press TV. U.S. President Donald Trump has reportedly detailed how the world's largest aircraft carrier, the USS Gerald Ford, came under a coordinated 17-angle attack by Iranian armed forces in the Red Sea. Delivering a speech at a Saudi investment forum in Miami on Friday, Trump described the moments leading up to the attack as a serious situation for the U.S. Navy. He said the naval forces were prepared, but the intensity of the attack by Iranian naval forces quickly escalated the situation. It was 1 o'clock in the morning, Trump said, when the warship...
That was all classified information that he said. He just got excited. He shouldn't have said that because the military keeps saying it didn't happen. That didn't happen. Then Trump told the truth.
Ship came under attack from 17 different angles. We knew we were in trouble, the president claimed. They were here. They were there. We ran for our lives. It was over, Trump said, citing one of his Navy commanders who was on board at the time the warship came under attack. The U.S. Navy's most advanced and largest supercarrier, which was deployed to West Asia ahead of U.S. joint military aggression against Iran, was engulfed in flames earlier this month. And after that, following the incident, the aircraft carrier retreated from its positions to the Greek Isle of Crete as the Pentagon attempted to frame the withdrawal as a mere mishap. Okay, so what happened? Trump now comes out. Remember what we were told. Laundry room fire, and they fought for 30 hours. Okay, what does Trump say? Now, what we're supposed to believe is this supercarrier had a laundry room fire. But Trump says this laundry room fire ship was attacked from 17 different angles. It sounds like it was out of the blue. They were like, oh my gosh. In fact, Trump said something like they fired 101 drones and missiles at this supercarrier, right? So what did they do? They flooded the zone. That's what they do. That's easy. They overwhelmed the ship's capacity to defend itself, right? They flooded the zone. They said, let's try to figure out, they probably could figure out how many, based on, data that they could get, how many targets this thing could track at one time and engage, and they just sent more. It's like I can do math. If you can track and defend yourself against 80 targets, all I got to do is send 81, right? But I'll send 101. So apparently Trump used that number, 101 missiles and drones. What did that mean? That means you got coming in, and he said from 17 different angles. Well, guess what? You can those drones all come in this direction, right? But then you program them. So some of them go out here, some of them go out there, some of them they change speeds so that they all, from all different angles, come in. So now what do you have? You have missiles and drones. You're here in the middle. You have missiles and drones coming in at you from all directions at the same time. You can shoot a lot of them down. A lot of them down. You can shoot most of them down. What if 5 hit you? What if you have 95% approval rating? You hit 5 or 6 drones, or 2 missiles and 3 drones, or 1 missile and 5 drones, whatever, you get hit. You're going to get some damage. So what we're to believe is that on a given night, on the night in question, the Iranians attacked this ship with 101 drones. According to people on the ship, we were running and it was over. We were running for our lives. Okay, that makes sense. You're in a war zone and you're attacked with drones and missiles, and we're running for your lives. Okay. And then you had just an unfortunate laundry room fire that you fought for 30.
Revolutionary salute to our family. Chevy Blue for the donation to the war chest. Revolution is a way of life. Absolutely appreciate the love, family. Say we could click the pause button. I know we're about to go in. You absolutely know it. Absolutely appreciate you helping me keep the lights on here at the House of Revolution. Salute, family.
Appreciate 30 hours. Some sailors were injured, 2 we're told. And now the ship is out of commission for 12 to 14 months minimum. Could be a lot more. From a laundry room fire that, I don't know, just coincidentally happened when you were attacked by 101 missiles and drones. That's a little hard to believe. Donald Trump has spilled the beans. And I think he's got some dementia, because I think they probably decided that they weren't going to put that out. And as soon as this son of a gun started talking, he spilled the beans. He doesn't know that he's supposed to keep his friggin' mouth shut, so he can't maintain the story that he's supposed to tell. So now he comes out and it was supposed to be a laundry room fire, Trump.
They know they tactic work, though.
No, it's not.
A super carrier.
And now we've learned something. If this was in a Russian army, you know what they'd say? This is a lot of armies. They'd say, no, don't bring that thing back in 12 to 14 months. That's $13 billion that has been wasted. What are we going to do with it? It's a fat, ripe target. In this day and age, CNN has done some articles, and other countries had a few. I think Reuters or somebody might have had one, and they're posing the question. And the answer is yes. Is the day of the supercarrier over? Well, we could put it that way. We could say the day of the supercarrier is over, or we could say the day of the missile is upon us. If you have a supercarrier and I have missiles and drones that can defeat a supercarrier, it ain't about the supercarrier, it's about the missiles and drones. And how do you defeat missiles and drones when I can throw more of them at you? You know, I can throw more missiles and drones at you than you can shoot down. And they're cheap. And they don't cost me $13 billion. And how much is it going to cost to fix this thing? Hundreds of millions of dollars. And it already has its problems. It has some kind of a weird sewage system that doesn't work. And even if it does, who are you going to fight it with? See, here's the thing I'm saying. 2 things. Maybe when I said if there's a world military shift, that's part of it. The other part of it is the U.S. has gone up the escalation ladder. They wanted to fight, these little teeny countries so they could take their stuff easily and defeat them. Okay. But now the U.S. is trying to execute what's called the Wolfowitz Doctrine. In other words, no other country is allowed to rise to prominence enough that it could challenge our supremacy. But now big countries are rising. And now you have to militarily engage the big boy. And you better be ready to fight. And Iran is sure enough one of the big boys. So now these things that you were doing against the amateurs, things that you were doing against the weak countries, they're not going to work against these countries. You're going to get stomped out if you go up against Iran with the same. Don't bring that what the Manute Bol used to say when somebody come in and try to score, he'd block the shot. No, not in my house, right? It is, look, don't bring that weak stuff around here. Don't bring that weak stuff around here, right? No, you want supercarrier, you use that against Libya. Supercarrier, you use that against Venezuela, you use that supercarrier against this country or that country. You bring that up in here, we're gonna light it up. That's what Iran said. You bring that supercarrier around here and we're going to light it up. You might take that back, and when next time you fight in Afghanistan, use it then. You bring it around us. We're going to work on it, right? And that's what happened. They came in with the supercarrier against a country that has super missiles. And they said, it's big, and it's slow, and it's available. And it's just not going to work. It is not, look, Stanley, the right tool for the right job, right? The supercarrier is not the right tool for the job if the country's bigger than, I don't know, Luxembourg. If you have a country with modern anti-shipping missiles, a modern air defense, none of that stuff's going to work. And what Iran has done is developed an air force that's unmanned. That's all. They said, we know lots of surface-to-air missiles. First of all, if we use airplanes, they're slower. Missiles are faster. They can go up in space where you can't shoot them down, and then they can come down and get you at the last minute. And then some of them will be drones, and there'll be all kind of weird things. Some of those drones, the radio cross signature is no bigger than a large bird. And so the radar doesn't really see it. And it flies really, really low. It's fairly slow and fairly low and buzzing along, and the radar doesn't pick it up as a threat. And you'll see just one of them coming in, and the radar doesn't pick that up as a threat. And if it did, how many missiles can you shoot down $20,000 drones with before you run out of missiles? And they don't run out of $20,000 drones. You see what I'm saying? What you have to do is come up with a way to address the issue of drones. You got to come up with a way not to present big targets. And of course, that was the day when we had all these bases, and you got all these bases, they're targets. You got big things make big targets. And the world military engagement rules are not what they were in the past. And maybe they never were. Maybe it was just the United States was facing people who did not have the current technological capabilities. And now that you're facing people that have the current technological capabilities, you can't bring that weak stuff around there no more. We've got these ships dancing all over the place to keep from dodging missiles. Now they're sending another supercarrier. What for? Where are you gonna put this other supercarrier? You gonna put them in harm's way? They got, what do you call it? Surface drones, which is nothing but a boat, an unmanned boat loaded with, that's all. They got an unmanned boat loaded with explosives. Buddha's Wagon. You know what Buddha's Wagon is? It was a book. And I had to read it when I did VBIED training. Vehicle-borne improvised explosives devices. I did training on car bombs. CIA, a retired CIA agent actually taught the course. And I took that course. And it was and you had to read a book called Buddha's Wagon. And there was a guy whose last name was Buddha, B-U-D-A. And in the 1920s, he was pissed at Wall Street. Imagine that at his time. And he took a wagon loaded with explosives and pushed it, took it into Wall Street, let it blow up. Because he thought the Wall Street people were bad. Wasn't all stupid, was he? But then that began the history of car bombs. That's my point. And he came up with a new kind of thing. A wagon load of explosives. I get close to it, I blow it up. And now what the US is running into is just simply a combination of things. One of them is the drones, which are fairly simple. You just kind of make them autonomous. You put explosives on them, you make them programmable, you give them various means of navigation. Think about it, that's it. This thing will fly. It has navigational system on it. It has some of these things have like a 2-cycle little motorbike engine, right? And they're not fast enough to take off on their own. So these drones have like a little rocket engine that takes them off. Once they get up to speed, its engine comes on and off they go. They got like 100 pounds of explosive, 100 pounds of high explosive. Brother, you get hit with 100 pounds of high explosive. Trust me when I tell you that, that's a wake-up call. Okay, you can do a lot of damage with 100 pounds of high explosives, a lot. So they don't need enough gas to come back or whatever they burn. It's boom, you're done. Only need enough to make it to the location they're going to. And apparently this big old ship was facing this kinds of stuff. And now, militarily, the United States has to rethink things. But here's the problem. with the changing military battlefield technology. There is something that we have to take into account as being a distinct possibility. Okay, what if the changing military technology, the ability now of a country such as Iran to defend itself with missiles and drones, to make missiles and drones, to store missiles and drones, to hide missiles and drones inside of mountains, all of these things that you can do to hide them from air power, to hide them from missile power, all this kind of stuff, right? What if the ability to do that now means that an imperial power, shall we say, right? A country that says we're going to project military power all over the world. We're going to tell you 7,000 miles from here, you got to do what we tell you. If not, we will project military powers to your shores and take you out. We'll do it with air power. What if the changing technological scenario actually means that that's not possible anymore? See, that's what I think. I don't think that it necessarily means that we're so far behind technologically that we're in a horse and buggy. In some ways, yes. Only because what our aim and our goal is, okay? And what I'm saying is this: if our aim and our goal is to protect ourselves from invaders, we already have a significant advantage, and that is, as my self-defense instructor used to always say, they can't hit you if you're not there. If you see problems, if you're in a barn, you see problems, if you see some people are woofing, they're arguing with each other, get out of there. You see a fight, get ready to kick off, get out of there. Somebody starts getting smart with you, hey, you're a little chump, just leave. You don't have to block a punch if you're not there when somebody's throwing a punch. You don't have to duck a bullet if you ain't there when some people start shooting. They can't hit you if you ain't there, right? So number one, we have an absentee advantage. We're halfway across the world. So as they've said, you've heard me say it a million times, not quite a million, but close. America is a country with insignificant powers to the north and south, and fish to the east and west. We're so far away, ain't nobody coming to get us. That's not really possible. You'd have to sail to our shores and attack us from the sea, and we can easily defend our shores. We should be able to, right? Against big ships coming in, we've got submarines and things like that, so we should easily be able to defend big ships. So we don't have to realistically spend a lot of money on the military. But we do. Why? Because we want to project our military. We want to come visit you and force you to do what we want. And mainly that is give us all your stuff or we'll kill you. That's mainly it. We want to force you to do what we want. Well, what is that? Give me everything you got or we'll kill you. It's armed robbery, it's piracy, and that's what we're trying to do. So we're going to project expeditionary military power out to various parts of the world. And because the wars, the military engagements that we're involved in are not for just cause. We can't explain to the American people why we're doing it. You got to lie to them. You can't just tell them we're doing it because we want to steal these people's stuff. You got to lie and give them another reason of why you're doing it. Okay. So therefore, we can't build this big ground army and fight ground warfare. Not only that, if we did, then our supply lines are too long. If we're going to fight ground warfare across the world, our supply lines are from here to there. That would be too expensive, hard to do. Then you'd have to maintain an army of occupation. It's just not doable. And you'd lose a lot of people, and you got to convince the Americans it's just not doable. It's a lot easier to say, we'll fly over you, we'll bomb you, we won't take casualties. That's the only way to do it, to be an empire and convince the American people that you're not. So we have a disadvantage. We got to lie to our people while we're there. We've got to not take casualties because we don't have a moral and just war. And so the American people are not down with casualties because they don't feel like there's a reason for us to be there in the first place. So we got to say we're there to bring democracy or something stupid or protect the protesters. I mean, how stupid do you have to be to believe that stuff? But there's people stupid enough to believe it. Or 4 different things. What are you there for? To stop them from getting nukes. Oh, really? Stop them from getting nukes? To protect the protesters. Oh, really? To stop them to protect the protesters? Ballistic missiles. What about ballistic missiles? I don't know. Can we go back to the protesters? Whatever. We got to give you 4 different reasons why we're there, because they're all lies. Because we're there to steal their oil. Every single time we're there to steal and dominate their oil and overthrow their governments and all that stuff. And we can't say that. So we got to say we're there to protect the protesters and bring democracy, other things that idiots believe. Idiots believe that stuff. But we don't, you and I, because we know better. And now that countries can defy us militarily at a bargain basement price. That's right. You can go to Walmart and buy drones and stop an imperial power from coming to your shoreline and murdering you and taking your stuff. That's right. You can build, what are they called? Shaheeds. The Russians call them geranium. They call them geraniums, Garand drones. So, and they're sharing drones. They're sharing them. What happened? The Russians are fighting and the Iranians are like, hey, we got some Shaheeds. And the Russians are like, we're down. So the Russians start taking the Shaheed drones, buying them for the Iranians, and they kind of start franchising and they get them. And, you know, the Russians are pretty good in technology. They take these drones and they upgrade them. And then the Iranians say, hey, be nice if we had some of the Russians say, piece of cake, bro. I got you, man. We're good. Here's a shipload of these upgraded drones. So they're passing their drones back and forth, kicking your butt with them and sending 100 of them at your carriers from 17 different directions. And people are running for their lives. And next thing you know, they got a laundry fire, room fire. There we go. So now you're losing ships to laundry room fires. Somebody must have washed a missile in the laundry room. And a geranium drone. Don't wash your geranium drones in the laundry room and you won't have these fires. And now, additionally, at the same time, we've got some bases that have been hit. Apparently, another base was hit in Saudi Arabia. And there seems to be multiple very expensive planes that were hit there. I think some E3 Sentries and AWAC. E3 Sentries are effectively AWAC planes. So apparently there was a bunch of planes. These are the planes, the eyes in the sky planes. The planes that have all of this technology and they fly up there and they pick up all this stuff and they give you all of this information, data. And you use that data for targeting and know who's coming and all that kind of stuff, right? Well, apparently the Iranians, for whatever reason, based on probably some space-based ISR, picked up that there was a bunch of these planes sitting on a runway at an airport, whatever the case were, whistled some old missiles in there and hit them because those missiles aren't expensive and they got plenty of them. And so now what the U.S. has to do, now here's the problem we have. We have to change our whole military industrial complex system. And we have to go from, we're going to have these giant ships with super carriers with expensive planes and all this other stuff we got to have, to we got to have cheap drones and lots of them. The only problem is they're home. They're firing them from their own airspace. So they don't have to take them anywhere. If we had as many drones as, let's say we had as many drones as Iran, we'd have to get them to Iran because we ain't home, which means we'd still have to put them on ships and we'd have to take them to the area. And Iran would be able to attack those ships. That's the problem with expeditionary forces. They are vulnerable. That's the problem with having a long supply line from here to Iran. And might I add, I would suspect that Iran has some submarine forces, but I would suspect that Iran is increasing their submarine technology. You know, apparently the North Koreans now have some nuclear subs. I'm pretty sure they're getting the technology from the Russians, and if they are, based on the Yasin-class submarine, these are some of the best submarines in the world. Okay, so that means that now, if you want to come attack North Korea, they may be able to take your ships out as soon as they get in the Pacific. They may be sitting off the coast. They may be anywhere. So now, you know where the hell those things are. and you start sending some supply ships over with stuff, or you're sending some big carriers or whatever, and they got effectively Yasin class style nuclear subs sitting down there hunting your ships, you got a problem. So again, you have other people who can match your technology, but again, remember something: a ship or a plane or a sub are only platforms. That's all it is. It's the platform that you fire from. What are you firing from that? The problem is we got Tomahawks. They're old. And missiles are old. They're not hypersonic missiles. Our missiles are over the hill. They can be shot down. They can be effective, but they're not as good as the new hypersonic stuff. Apparently, then we don't have missiles, these multi-warhead missiles. Iran is firing some pretty high-tech stuff. These multi-warhead missiles that they're called dancing missiles that move all over the place, man. And then they combine them together with drones and missiles and all of this stuff. Their missile technology far surpasses ours. So even the platforms that we have, some of them are pretty good, but they're vulnerable platforms. The ships and planes and stuff are vulnerable and expensive, but even then, what do we have? Tomahawks and JASSMs, a few different missiles we can fire. And as their air defenses get better and they're able to shoot those down, more effectively, we better have some better stuff. But we got to get it to you. So my point is that the military technology is changing, but the landscape is changing in a way that makes it extremely difficult to be an imperial power, to project military power long distances from your shores. It is getting very, very difficult to fly a plane, to push a aircraft carrier or a destroyer halfway across the world and attack a country that has significant technology now. And I don't think our carriers can come within 1,000 kilometers of those shores, man. I don't think you start getting inside of 1,000 kilometers, even at 1,000 kilometers, you're likely to see drones and missiles coming from 17 different directions. There is no safe place. That's reality. So the United States is in a situation now, we found out the hard way. We said we're going to take Iran out. And Iran said, if you do, I will kick you right in the groin. And we were like, you can't kick us in the groin. And Iran says, maybe I can. I don't know. We're going to find out. You come messing around, you come sniffing around here, we're going to find out. Something. You got kneecap, I kick your kneecap. I kick you inside of your ankle. That don't feel good. I can try to kick you in the groin. I kick you somewhere. There's a lot of places, but from the waist down, I can kick some of those and hurt you. So let's give it a shot. And Americans said, yeah, good idea. Let's do this. And they found out. They messed around, as Pete Hegseth said. They messed around and found out. And now they're in a situation where the whole world's looking at them saying, everybody knows now. The cat's out of the bag. And now you've got other countries, Russia and China, saying, man, if they can devastate your bases with missiles, man, what we do to those bases so quick, they're all targeted. So we're in a situation where, if you're honest about it, America has lost the narrative of, we didn't have military supremacy anyway, but we lost the narrative. Now we don't have the narrative of military supremacy. Who in America is going to attack now? The last thing, and or Americans going to stand for it, they're going to say, if America says, yes, we're going to attack Amphibia, I'll make up the name of a country. Guess what? The American people say, you better not. Last country we attacked kicked us right in the groin. You better not attack them. I don't know what those people got. They might have drones and they might attack us. We might have another laundry room fire. We don't want to go out and die of laundry room fires. No, American people don't want a war no more. They know what pains. Americans are hit the road, Jack, and don't you come back no more, no more, no more, no more. That's where we are. So we are in a combination of things, right? We are facing we're facing stronger military powers right now, in that we're going after the big boys, right? We are finding it difficult to project power with large surface ships who are vulnerable to attack. We have military technology that's 1990s, and it's not effective on the modern battlefield. We have expensive things, so we can make a few expensive things that now go against a lot of cheap things. The dynamics, put those things together. As I love to say, either any of those things individually is a disaster. You put them together, it's catastrophic for a country that's trying to be the world military power. We are no longer the world military power, not even close to it. And there's one thing worse. What we're reading is that the people on the Gerald Ford and these other in the Navy are saying, I'm sick and tired of this. All they do is send me to sea and they'll never let me go home. We've been at sea for 10 months. I want to go home. And if I get out of this one, when my 4 years are up, I'm getting out. Now, if you're in the military for 4 years, you have 4 years active and 2 years in reserves, which means they can bring you back. So it's a 6-year stint effectively. So they can say I'm out after 2 years and you can activate them and say, you got to force them into 6 years. But here's the bottom line. When they get out, they ain't coming back. And guess what? The United States has just upped its age of people, service, where you can apply and go into the military up to 42. Why? Because nobody want to be in the military. So now what are we going to have? We're going to have a military that's technologically inferior, that's unable to protect power, that is overpriced and doesn't work as well, that is stretched thin all over the globe in a technological environment where we can no longer project expeditionary power. We'll be unable to institute a draft because the people will go berserk if we do. And we'll have everybody's leaving the military because a combination of they don't want to die and because what we got ain't working and they're being overused and overworked and put in a dangerous environment and they don't like it. Spells the end of an empire, kind of, doesn't it? You put all those things together, it spells the end of an empire. If you focus on violence and domination, once you lose the capacity to execute the violence to dominate, you got nothing. It's where we are. It's over. You remember someone, a couple weeks ago, perhaps it was me, saying if the United States attacks Iran, the empire's done. If the United States attacks Iran, that's it for the empire. The United States has attacked Iran. That's it for the empire. It's over. Imperialism, American imperialism. Not that we still can't do some things, but we can't do the things we used to do. And there is no easy way out. What are you going to say? We'll throw a nuke at them. Then what? You throw a nuke at Iran, they're going to flatten everything in the area. Everything. You might as well shoot yourself with it. They're going to say, oh, really? Well, in that case, we might as well end Israel, number one. Number two, Saudi Arabia, all of their oil infrastructure, all of their water infrastructure, everything is gone. We will make this region uninhabitable, thereby wiping out the global economy, causing famine, starvation, you name it, putting us back in the Stone Ages, and we damn sure might be too late. We already might have put ourselves back in there, which means revolution in this country. That's what it means, revolution. Thanks a lot, everybody. As I always
the United States together with Israel is hitting the energy infrastructure in Iran. But they're keeping their focus mostly on the targets that are related to the military operation of the United States. What is your understanding the way that Iran is continuing with this fight?
Oh, no. Iran is servicing, when I say servicing, that's a euphemism for destroying. Iran is servicing Western industry in the Middle East or in the Persian Gulf quite effectively, too. It's just that, President Win Bigly, a.k.a. Trump, because he win bigly, as he puts out, I win bigly. It's, so much for grammar. That's what I'm calling him now, President Win Bigly. He has destroyed Iran for 29 days now. He's destroyed every day. He's destroyed Iran, but and Iran doesn't have anything left. But for some reason, Iran keeps shooting a lot of missiles, drones, and everything else being destroyed. I guess they rebuild them at night. But the point is Iran has enough assets to hit both military and industrial targets in parallel. For example, two Iranian steel plants have been hit by the Israelis. Iran returned the favor, hitting the Israeli plant and 5 other plants in Kuwait, in Bahrain, in Qatar, in UAE, in Saudi Arabia. They somehow still have quite a few missiles to go. So Iran has a giant reserve of missiles, and they're still producing missiles and drones. And you see the videos that are coming out of Tel Aviv and other places. Missiles still are coming in, and considering the people that let those videos through, they're facing up to I think 15 years in prison from the Israeli government if they're caught. So they're really, those videos that get posted, those people are posting at a grave personal risk to their own freedom. So that's not just people posting. I mean, that's a serious risk that they're taking on themselves. And we see that there are bigger and bigger demonstrations starting in Jerusalem and in Tel Aviv and other cities against the Israeli government by Israelis, by anti-Zionist Jews, and by others who don't want this over. They're still a minority. I mean, don't get me wrong, they're still less than 20%, but they're growing, which is a good sign. But in Kuwait, Kuwait's close enough to Iran that we've actually seen videos of Iranian drones, FPV drones with really big battery packs, flying around looking for something to blow up. At this point, that's worth the effort. And there's nobody shooting at them. Nothing. The bases are just easy targets. And in Saudi Arabia at Prince Sultan, which was the question to begin with, I had it on very good intelligence, actually, not my person, but through a person directly from that base. 2 weeks ago, the Saudis told the U.S. military, "You're on your own. We ain't helping you. We're neutral. That's it. Survive the best you can." And those bases, interestingly enough, they don't have bunkers. They never built bunkers. They didn't think any conflict would last that long, and they were very, very reliant on their anti-aircraft systems. They thought the anti-air would be able to handle anything. Well, those systems are either out of ammunition, out of interceptor missiles, or they've been destroyed. So that's how that goes. Well, the issue here is now that Iran has free rein to hit these bases. There's nothing there to stop them. And amazingly, I don't know how, but Iran keeps getting satellite imaging from of these bases. I know Americans are. I think the Americans are the only satellites in space, right? Because they've forbidden. Trump has now forbidden any satellite imaging coming out of there at all for over the last month. So nobody sees the damage. But amazing, I guess it turns out there's more than one country that has satellites up. And they may have an axe to grind with the U.S., like say in Ukraine. I'm not saying that who's doing it, but apparently there's some people that would like to do proxy back. Let the viewer decide who I'm talking about. you have smart viewers. I think they get the point. So Iran has quite a bit of the fighting capability, and there's reports coming out that they've hit American the 82nd Airborne troops that are arriving in Kuwait. So they're not waiting to be invaded somewhere. They're taking the war directly to wherever the troops are. And Kuwait was complaining that they were being attacked by Iran, and these are guests of Kuwait. Well, if you're the Plotsdarm for the future invasion, don't be surprised you get hit. They're not, Iran is not Saddam Hussein, who sat there for 6 months, believing for some reason that he wasn't going to get attacked. Iran's already been attacked, and Iran is doing what Iran should be doing to defend itself.
Jen Spark, give me the day off. I'm skipping work today. You should too, Stu.
What is your understanding of Zelensky going to these Arab states to help them? It's somehow amazing to see Zelensky going there, because the United States was there. The United States has everything in those countries, had everything in those countries. They couldn't do anything. And right now, Zelensky somehow is a superhero for these Arab states to help them. What is the capability of Ukraine when it comes to the help that they can give to these Arab states?
Well, there's two factors here at play. First of all, hi, remember me? Hi, I'm here. Hi. The little midget called Zelensky. Yeah, he's no longer being on the front page of everybody's news. Yeah. The coming famine, the arrived energy crisis in Europe, and there will be in the European Union, and there will be a famine, at least for the lower classes. By midsummer, prices will double, if not triple, for food items, because they're looking at having half the crop that they normally have, because it's already in the south of Europe. It's already planting season. North of Europe, the planting season is coming up in the next week and a half, 2 weeks, and there's no fertilizer. Yep. And without modern chemical fertilizers, the whole green revolution was built on that. You're looking at half the crop, if not more, if not less, especially a lot of these areas. So there's going to be starvation. I'm not saying whole nations are going to starve, but the lower classes that are already having troubles feeding their families. I have a friend of mine, Lorenzo. He's a poli-sci professor in Italy, and he was telling me half a year ago that a lot of the poorer Italian families and the lower middle class Italian families, they have trouble feeding themselves and their families by week 4 of the month, because the money's out. And wait till the food prices skyrocket, because there's going to be a much smaller crop across the world, across a lot of different countries. So, Zelensky somehow dropped off the front page, and he needs to be back on the page. That's one, because he wants the attention, because how can you ask for money if you're not on the front page? And two, he really doesn't want to be inside Ukraine, especially if Russia finally decides, if the leadership in Russia finally decides to, let's get rid of him. So he really doesn't. He spends as little time inside Ukraine as possible in the last 4 years. Zelensky has his tours of Europe and Asia and wherever else constantly. I don't think there's ever been a wartime ruler that spent as little time in his country as Zelensky has. It's the exception when he's home than when he's not. Having said that, how much can Zelensky help? He's out of ammunition interceptors inside Ukraine, except for certain areas, like center of Kiev. So most of Ukraine is now flyover country for anything that Russia has. Look, the UAE, unless they were trying to do some kind of deception trick here, the UAE let the president of UAE, what's his name, Mohammed, it's MBZ, whatever.
Yeah, MBZ, Mohammed bin Zayed. Yeah.
Bin Zayed, well, that's it. I couldn't remember a lot. I'm horrible with names. He let out that guy let out that, we're going to grab the islands back from Iran with the Americans. So Karg Island's not the target. It's going to be, of course, the target's going to be the islands in Straits of Hormuz. which is just going to be drone hunting targets for anybody that lands on those islands. I feel sorry for these guys because they're just going to be sent into a meat grinder for nothing. As for the Epstein elites, so they can rape and murder and eat some more children. And apparently UAE has decided to stop existing because I'm pretty sure once they're fully in this conflict, Iran is just going to level them. And if you take out the water desalination plants, you know, I mean, look, the trilaterate territories that were the 7 sheikdoms that became the UAE until 80 years ago, or less than 80 years ago, really, for the audience that doesn't know that, these entities were nothing more than a small mud brick fort and a small village with a port. That's all there ever was. They were very small. The majority of the Arab population in that area were Bedouins, were nomads, and these small villages with a small warlord sitting there that then became these modern giant cities that cannot feed themselves. One, they don't grow food, very limited anything they grow, and two, there's no fresh water. There's not enough fresh water there's barely enough fresh water for the villages that were there. And now those villages of a few hundred, maybe 1,000 or 2,000 people have grown up into cities of 4 or 5 million. You cut off the desalination plants and you'll have mass casualties within a day to 2 days of people dying from thirst in a 45, 50 degree environment. And if they enter this war, realistically speaking, I think the future of the UAE is going to be post-apocalyptic, half-desert buried cities that, you know, they'll have tours to see, you know, something out of Mad Max, the Road Warrior, or Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome, and that level area, because those they're not capable of surviving without having these technologies. And if they go into a full war with Iran, of course, all that infrastructure is going to become a target. Instantly, it's going to become a target. So those entities, I think, are going to die out as political entities. But they seem to be hell-bent on it for whatever reason. I don't know, you can't fix stupid.
They attacked, Stas, yesterday they attacked 2 water facilities in Iran. But so far from what we've seen, Iran didn't attack desalination plants, didn't attack any sort of, you know, water reservoir when it comes to the Arab states together with Israel. It seems that there is still, as the commander, the head of, you know, the head of Iranian army said, they're keeping their eyes, their focus on, on logistics, on radars, and forces, American and Israeli forces. And I don't know how long they want to continue with this sort of concept, because right now, as we talk, they attack, you know, power grids in Tehran, for example. Some part of Tehran, they attack the power grid, and they attack universities as well. And what is your understanding about the way that Iran is not going after these facilities, instead that they're attacking, you know, strategic targets?
Well, Iran yesterday issued a warning for all American and Israeli.
I'll make a video on the UN reparations situation tomorrow. Gotcha. Salute, family.
Israeli universities in these other countries which they issued as a humanitarian warning, leave, because we're going to destroy them. As I said, stay a kilometer away from them to save your own students' lives. So they're going to go tit for tat and then some, because they're always, if 2 Iranian steel plants got hit, Iran hit 6 plants in return. They're escalating higher on that, but they're doing it with warnings, leave, as opposed to the Americans or Israelis that are just hitting plants and hoping to kill as many people as possible. Iran's giving them the warnings, get out before we blow it up. If you stay there, it's your own problem. But I think Iran has gone after a lot of the oil and gas infrastructure back for revenge from its infrastructure being hit. They have not hit the desalination plants. There's one Iranian desalination plant that got hit on Kark Island, where the Americans supposedly want to land. That's right. You don't have enough water there anyway, so let's destroy the water plant. Just like they bombed the airstrip. Now they can't land on that airstrip if they need to land on the airstrip. So lots of intelligent planning right there. But if they go after those desalination plants, any country that goes into a full war with Iran is going to cease to exist. And I think the UAE is going to be that first case in point for everybody else. You know, Bahrain, it looks like it's questionable whether the king is still there because the revolution there is only growing in power. They just recently killed one of the Shia leaders of, or I don't know, activists. Just tortured him to death. There was videos of his body, photographs of his body, and that's, you know, in his 20s or something. They just tore him up. So that was, I mean, it's stupid. It's heavy-handed and stupid because when your population is 80% Shia and they're ready to revolt, doing that just kind of pisses them off even more. So you're guaranteed to have a revolution in the government. But countries like Qatar, areas, you know, the damage, I'll tell you, the damage in Qatar, from my oil and gas supply chain background in Halliburton and Cameron, and then from, I was a supply chain director on construction projects for Technomont. So we're expanding part of the of the Moscow oil refinery to make E85 petro, and we were building one of the 3 phases of the giant Gazprom Neft LNG plant in Amur. So I know how long it takes for the metal construction. I know how long it takes for these vessels. Some of these vessels can be up to 78, 80 meters long, all hand manufactured. Not to mention logistics and logistic nightmares when you're moving things that big. You know, I know how long it takes to do all this. And looking at and then how long if the wellheads are damaged, to replace the wellheads, and if the wells are damaged, what you can do with the wells, or if you have to re-drill totally new wells, the time frames involved. And from the pictures I've seen from the hits on the Qatari LNG plants, you're looking at 1.5 to 2 years. They're going to be down. And if the LNG plants are down for that long, and if it's wellheads, it may be longer. And as this goes on, it could be much more damage. It could be 5 to 7, 8 years down to get everything rebuilt. And then you're looking at that. What normally you get ammonia out of the gas. You use gas to manufacture fertilizer. And until those gas facilities are up and running, there's things like drying gas, cleaning it, drying it, because you've got drying it from water vapor, cleaning it from all the sand and other gases that are involved, which ammonia happens to be one of them. That you're not, and until all that's up, you're not going to be getting any fertilizer out of it either. So you're looking at 30% of the chemical fertilizer being gone off the market for 3, 4, 5 years. Never mind the LNG. That could be at least 1.5 to 2 years at present. It may be much worse before this conflict is over. The disaster level for that's already created, and for European economies, non-Russian European economies, obviously, and other places, is huge. But again, Iran has hit strategically, and it's parallel in parallel, and is still destroying the U.S. bases. So it still has that much capacity, no matter what the Americans are saying. And it's hitting Israel very, very hard. Part of very large parts of Tel Aviv now look like Gaza. Talk about karma. So yeah, they've got huge problems. And Iran has not given up the ghost. It's fighting hard. It's taking up casualties, though. It's not one-sided. But most of the casualties Iran's not taking is civilians being murdered, because the U.S. military and Israel can't find the military targets, so they go after civilians, as they do every single time.
What do you make of what has happened to Gerald Ford aircraft carrier? Because there were a lot of rumors about, they said it was a laundry room. The fire, somehow was the main problem. And those areas, but it's for an aircraft the size of Gerald Ford, it's huge. How can someone imagine that that was the problem? It seems that the reports show that the problem is much deeper than that. And what do you make of it?
Look, there's two issues here. First of all, it's the toilets, and the second one is the fire. I interviewed Cameron McGregor. I'm not going into who's related, who he's related to. People can figure it out on their own. And Cameron is former U.S. Navy officer. And I heard it from him, and I've heard it from several other people. Look, the toilets are soft mutiny because the aircraft carrier has been out to sea for 11 months. The people are exhausted. Physically, they're exhausted. They're a lot of them are not trained enough, and I mean, they're physically just exhausted. I mean, imagine even at something the size of an aircraft carrier, you're out there for 11 months. The soft mutiny in that when they want to go back, they'll start doing things. Sailors will start doing things like flushing down the toilet, t-shirts, ropes, things like that, because that blocks up blocks up the filtration systems, and then they start to overflow. I mean, 80% of the toilets overflow. That's a pretty big thing on something the size of the size of the Gerald Ford. The fire, and I talked to her. He's like, "Have you ever heard?" First of all, to understand, this ship has thousands of compartments that are watertight, so they're airtight. They can be closed off so the ship doesn't sink. Right? It's very hard to sink an aircraft carrier. Just for no other reason, just for that. 30 hours to put out a fire in a laundromat. And I asked Cameron, have you ever heard of something like that? He said, no, I've never heard of anything like that. That's not realistic. More likely what happened is they got hit. And the hit, whatever missile or large drone that hit, created enough damage that it had a fire incident that took 30 hours to put out. It's hard to believe that it was just some kind of one compartment that could have been closed off. Even if it was spread for 30 hours, they were putting the fire out.
Snap your W-2 and file your taxes 100% free. Plus, get your biggest refund. Roughly 37% of filers qualify.
Yeah. We've learned, from the mainstream media, mostly in the United States, they're talking about that the United States, the Trump administration, the Defense Department is looking for companies that can quickly supply prefabricated transportable bunkers to protect troops. Where do they need these, bunkers? Are they going to use them in one of these islands? Are they going to use them in Arab states? I don't know. What is the main objective of these bunkers?
Well, one, they need them at every single one of those 23 bases because apparently none of them have ever built bunkers. As a former armor and as a former infantry officer, I find that mind-boggling. I mean, ground forces, they stop somewhere for longer than a couple hours. You start digging in a combat environment, let alone you're standing there for good. You start making bunkers. You start making fortified positions where in case you get artillery, you have places to hide and wait it out. The fact that these bases these naval and these Air Force bases have no bunkers is mind-boggling. But also, more than likely, yes, they're trying to create bunkers for if they take the islands, they have someplace to hide. I mean, look, it's great you're in bunkers, but sooner or later you're going to go outside to take a piss. You can only do things inside a bunker for so long. Never mind, you have to bury the bunkers to get them there. And great, you're in bunkers. Meanwhile, drones are flying over. FPV drones are flying over your head all over the place. I mean, look, a range for a large FPV drone with a large battery pack on it, with the ability to carry a 20 kilogram payload, which easily two large RPG rounds. The type of drones that Russian mass manufactures. I'm not saying they could be in Iran or anything, but they could be in Iran. I mean, they could just appear there. Those types of drones have a 50-kilometer range. Every one of those islands is easily within that range. And you try to find the drone operator, you put, it's two-man teams. You put two-man teams under this tree, you put two-man teams under that cliff, you put two-man teams on that roof, each of them with a dozen drones, and go have fun. And this is the reality of what you're looking at. And those troops that are going to be sent on those islands are just going to get butchered. They're going to be hunted by drones day and night. And I'm not talking Shahed or Garan type drones, the big drones. I'm talking about FPV drones, which, by the way, can accelerate from 0 to 120 in about 2 seconds. So you're not going to outrun them either. That's the point. You want to take these islands, and besides, you take these islands and then what? Because, by the way, those drones, they work really well on ships too. As a matter of fact, ships can't run. I mean, it's that simple. You put 100 of those drones out flying into any one American destroyer, and you may not sink it, but you're going to damage the hell out of it because it's not going to be able to stop them. It may stop 30, 40, but there'll be so many hits going off that destroyer is going to be very damaged. By the way, there's, the American media isn't saying a word about the U.S. Navy's denying it, but there's, it looks like very serious information. And early on, there was a Aegis class destroyer that was heavily damaged while refueling, and two, a transport ship with missiles, Tomahawks and such, was sunk by a Iranian submarine. So, of course, you're not going to get any kind of acknowledgement of that from Washington anytime from that regime. But sometime in the future, we may find the truth, or when we get the videotapes back from that submarine.
Looking at the way that Donald Trump is managing the war, or somehow trying to continue the war.
Stop. Managing? You need to rephrase that. Screwing it up, yes. Managing? There's no managing here.
Yeah, that's a good point, actually. But what does he want? What do we know? Is he seeking? When, let's assume he sends all these Marines in one of these islands, and they get somehow killed by the drones, by missiles, but all of this. So what is the gain for him? What is he risking? What is the main reason behind this sort of gamble that he's taking?
The 4-day war, which is now in 30 days, remember 4 days, it's going to be all over in 4 days. They are clueless what to do. Look, they need Iran to stop firing, and so they can leave and declare that they had a victory. And for some reason, the Iranian government doesn't want to play ball. So now what do? They don't know what to do. I mean, look, the news is coming out of, never mind, you had Kent, Joe Kent. This guy, Kent, he's talking a lot about how much the Israelis actually control the U.S. government. Most people that wanted to know this already knew this, but this is just more confirmation. A, B, the news that came out. First of all, back about a year ago, I watched a clip with Tulsi Gabbard where she's saying, Trump, because of the way his mentality works, we have to reorganize the daily security brief. The daily security brief normally for a president is, here's about 5 pages of information, go read it, sir. This is what's going on in the world. Trump doesn't like to read. I think he knows how to read, but he doesn't like to read. So she said they were making it into a Fox News type mini brief for like 10, 15 minutes. This is the world in little tiny clips. God forbid you have to go into depth on anything. Well, last couple of days, it was, I think it's in the New York Times, actually, maybe Washington Post. They had an article come out from an insider that said, look, the president's brief on this conflict every day is 2 to 3 minutes long. And all it is explosions, things in Iran blowing up. And there's plenty of things in Iran blowing up. Let's be honest about it. The U.S. is sending a lot of ordnance into Iran. But that's his entire brief. So in his mind, we've won bigly. We're Mr. Bigly. We win bigly every day. Why haven't the Iranians stopped, right? They don't have anything left. Whether he wants to see the reality or whether he's being cushioned from the reality, But the point is, you know, if all you're looking at is 2 to 3 minute raw video of things blowing up, you're not going to have you're going to have a very skewed view of reality. And that Iran is continuing to strike everything in range, that doesn't fit into those 2-3 minutes of things blowing up. So you're dealing with a president that may be in early stages of dementia, and I think he is, because just look at the way he's speaking from Trump 1 to Trump 2. He's in short, choppy sentences. He's using words that like a 10, 11, 12-year-old uses to describe things, not an adult, an educated adult. And he's getting less coherent. He's getting more rambling and less coherent in any of his speeches. I mean, my God, it's painful to listen to them. At least I could take a break and go have a coffee between a portion of his speech. His audience that can't leave, you know, they have to sit through that. I feel sorry for them, honestly speaking. But that's what you're dealing with, and I think he's seriously out of touch with reality. He doesn't know how to end this. None of them know how to end this. No, except for the ones that really want to expand this into a crusade into Tehran. We're going to burn those Muslims down because we're going to end the world, because we're going to get Armageddon. You know, the psychopath portion, the heretic Christian Zionists, you know, like Hexen, the minister of war. We're going to have war. You know, these people are insane. I mean, they're not questionably insane. They're absolutely insane. Johnson, and there's so many of them. The neocons, I think, are in panic mode. They finally got the war they've all been wanting for 40 years, and it's gone to shit. And they don't know what to do now. You know, they're in panic. Oh my God, what the hell do we do now? Well, gentlemen, you wanted a war. Nobody said you were going to win it. So they need to get off from this somehow. They don't know how to get out of this. Because Iran has said flat out reparations. And I'll tell you, the average American senator would rather eat his liver or his children's liver. Okay, I won't say his children because I think some of them do. They'd rather eat his own liver before paying reparations to Iran. But what do you do now? I mean, if this war goes on for 30 years or 30 days or 30 months, the U.S. loses bigly no matter what, because look, fuel prices are skyrocketing in the U.S. Everything's on diesel in the U.S. I mean, we're talking not from the railhead to the store, but from port to the store. Most things travel by trucks. Fuel prices, everything is very fuel price sensitive. Trump's tariff Armageddon has really killed the economy as it is. The U.S. is in a recession. If you actually go by 2 negative growth quarters, it's in a recession. Things aren't going to get better. And they don't know what to do with it. They're clueless at this point. They need something to grab onto and say, we won. And those bastards in Tehran just don't want to give us that victory. So what do? Instead of just taking their lickings and saying, fine, we were going to step back, they're going to double down and triple down. Now they're going to send the infantry in to do what? Grab islands and get killed and be hunted by drones. And that's going to change what? Nothing. But it's I don't know what they're thinking, because, you know, when the corpses start coming back in mass, where, I mean, U.S. has already taken at least 10 times more casualties than they're admitting to, if we're going to talk realistically. But those that are still low enough, you know, 100 here or 100 there dead, you can still hide it and write it off and do things like that. And those types of articles, obituaries start appearing on the second day. Died for medical reasons, but not combat related. In one of the bases that's been hit. Okay, sure, whatever. He tripped, fell down the stairs, and broke his neck. You know, something like that, as opposed to getting hit by ordnance. But when there's thousands of dead or dying or wounded, heavily wounded troops that you can't evacuate efficiently, that's pretty hard to hide. I mean, let's be honest about that. I don't know what they're going to do.
Yeah. The other front, Stas, is what's going on in Lebanon. And what we've learned so far, that they're rationing their interceptors. They don't have that much to use against Iranian missiles, together with the rockets coming from Hezbollah on the other front. And they're running out of interceptors. They're running out of tanks. You know, in 40, you know, the new reports show that they're suffering they're destroying, Hezbollah is destroying a lot of tanks, at the southern part of Lebanon. The way that the Israelis haven't experienced this in 40 years, it seems how shocking that is for their army. It's not just about the tanks, about the way that they're attacking Israelis and killing Israelis.
Well, they're attacking the Israeli army. Let's begin with that.
Israeli army.
There's talk about up to 100 tanks destroyed. But okay, first of all, let's be realistic about it. They're not 100 tanks destroyed. There may be 100 tanks destroyed and damaged. Most tanks that look destroyed, they're not destroyed. They will be pulled back. They'll get repaired and they'll be put back online. Same thing as what happens in our conflict in Ukraine. A lot of that armor is not destroyed. There were in World War II, just as a prime example, there were tanks that would go through 4 crews that everybody's died inside, or half the crews died inside. They've been hit. They've even been burned. They get pulled back. Everything gets cleaned out. They get patched up, and the machine goes back into combat. So there's that moment. The interesting point for me, of course, right off the bat, is not that they're being hit by drones, but that these tanks have no grills. They have no anti-drone preparations. Israel was fighting drones and started putting grills on some of their tanks in Gaza. And here they go into Lebanon, and these are reserves that are being pulled in, and they're not being prepared at all, which is interesting enough, because you think they already got some experience of what drone warfare is, what we've been dealing with for 4 years, and they're not prepared, which is interesting enough. And then they had a call up of 350,000 reserves, about a third of whom refused to show up. So you're already having problems in society. A third of your reserves said, hell no. Now Netanyahu's declared a call up of another 450,000. Now let's understand, Russia when Russia mobilized, it mobilized about 350 to 400,000 troops. And these were all reservists, most of whom just came off active duty, and a lot of them had combat experience, out of a reserve pool of 32 million. That's everybody that's had any kind of military service. So Russia has a reserve pool of 32 million men that have, and some women, have had any kind of military service. But Russia's a country of 150 million. Israel pulls up 350,000 reserves out of a population of about 9 million, and now it's going to pull up another 450,000 reserves. Now, let's break that down a little further. So you figure in most societies, if they're a healthy society, underage children are about half of the population. Okay, let's say a little less, 40% of the population. That's 3,600,000. That leaves you with what? That leaves you with 5,400,000. Then you separate the elderly. Let me take another million off. So you got a 3.5 million adults, working adults, right? You've already had pull-ups of reserves for Gaza. You now have another 350. Now you're going to have another 450. Even if a third of those don't show up, you're still looking at about another 600,000 people, or about 20% of your workforce taken out of your workforce economically. So your economy is now in collapse just from that. And that's not counting any disruptions from cities being hit, people having to flee certain areas because you've started a war you can't win, but you want to save your political career and not have and not sit the rest of your life out in a cage that you more than deserve. And what happens to your country? Your country is dead. Well, it's not fully dead, because luckily there's American tax serfs that will happily fork over hundreds of billions of dollars to keep your country afloat while their own country collapses. There's that for the American audience to think about. You're the backstop for all of Israel's problems. So, I mean, economically, in a country that size, you can't keep that up for very long. Literally cannot keep that up for very long. But we know what the Israeli aim is, because Israeli politicians flat out say It's to exterminate the population of southern Lebanon, annex it, and build Israeli villages there. End of story. They flat out tell you that. They don't hide it. They boast it. They're not the ones on the front line fighting, of course, but they boast about it. It's all part of Greater Israel. We're going to annex right now a third of Lebanon. Then we're going to go for more. And with all the bombing in Beirut, you see, I mean, Lebanon is three societies in one. It's Orthodox and Catholic Christians, which are third. It's Shia Muslims, which is the third. And it's Sunni Muslims, which is another third. And a lot of times they fight amongst themselves. Well, Hezbollah is the Shia, and Israel has always been careful to fight Hezbollah without engaging the Sunnis or the Christians. But now they're bombing Christian neighborhoods left and right. And the Lebanese army, which is predominantly, it's, well, you know, call it an army is a stretch. It's a militia. It's a very large militia, not that well armed. Hezbollah is better armed than the Lebanese army. But they're a Christian army. And now you're bombing Christian neighborhoods. You're killing Christians in Lebanon. So the Lebanese army can't sit this out and go, yeah, it's just Israel and Hezbollah. Let them fight. Now they're going to be involved. So you're pulling in more and more opponents. But they're doing it out of pure arrogance because we're just going to exterminate them and take them all. Who cares, you know, what their religious background is? That's the attitude they're having. The people in charge of Israel are insane. I don't know how else to put it. They're absolutely insane. You can't deal with people like that. You can only crush people like that because they don't have a moral compass that most people would understand. They're not in this reality.
You know, when it comes to invading these islands in the Persian Gulf, close to the Strait of Hormuz, I don't know why why does the United States need to do that? They have to put Israelis on the front line, I think. That's a better solution. If they wanted this fight, they have to be on the front line fighting Iranians. Why do they need to put Marines to fight for Israelis? If that's the whole concept is to help Israel.
Oh, this isn't just about Israel. Let's not confuse that. Israel plays a large role in this. Israel may have been the one that finally started this. But let's not just say this is about Israel. The U.S. wants to, the neocons in the U.S. want to control oil and gas worldwide. They want to topple the difference between Israel's aims and the U.S. neocon aims is the U.S. neocons don't want to destroy Iran as a country. They want to topple the government, put their own dictator in place, and then have free access to all the infrastructure, i.e. the energy and the mineral infrastructure in place. They don't want to destroy it. It's money. It's money and control over key resources. The Israelis want to destroy Iran because Iran to them is a threat, like any country bigger than them is a threat. And, you know, they're already actively talking about Turkey's next. And then guess what comes after Turkey? There's Egypt on the other side. They want to destroy everybody around. That's what they're aiming for. So and then there's the American Zionist Christians, those heretics. They just want the end of the world. I mean, can we just have the end of the world already? I mean, how many times do we have to ask? We just want to kill everybody off so we can teleport to heaven. And they're very skewed rearrangement of Christianity. So you're dealing with different parties. I mean, they're sojourning together in this war, but they all have different aims. Somebody controls the minerals and the resources. Someone just destroy all the political opponents. The other party just wants to kill the world and just get it over with already. I mean, just to understand how insane some of these people are. And there's this girl who was in one of my classes. She's like a little sister to me. And we lost touch for about 20-something years. She found me on Facebook. We're writing back and forth. We still write back and forth once in a while. And she calls me up about 2 years ago when it looked like we may be on the edge of a nuclear exchange between Russia and the Biden White House. She's like, I'm so glad I'm going to get to see you soon. Like, you and your husband planning to come visit us in Russia? No, in heaven. We're going to have the end of the world finally. I mean, literally, these people are in power in the U.S., at least one of the three groups there in power in the U.S. People have a hard time understanding what they're dealing with. You're talking about Iran has fanatics. Well, the Iranian fanatics also have Christians and Jews in their government and in their societies, and they're protected. So I don't know how much they're fanatics. But the American fanatics want the end of the world, and the Israeli fanatics believe that if they bring Israel to the edge of destruction, the Messiah is going to come and wipe out everybody in the Middle East and let them rule the world. At least that part of it. Who's got the worst fanatics at this point? Well, let's see. The people that really haven't started a war in 200 years, or the people that can't stop from starting a war for 200 days. I mean, look, the nut jobs are in the West. Flat out in the U.S. and in Israel. That's where your insane people are right now. Absolutely insane. Or as they used to say in the army, batshit crazy. Don't know why. Don't ask me why that saying is what it is, but that's the saying. Batshit crazy. I mean, they. That's what we're dealing with. I mean, the neocons are a nice, tame, understandable bunch compared to the Christian Zionists.
In your opinion, what would be the way out for Donald Trump if he decides to do that? Because I see him in a very desperate situation right now. He literally cannot do anything but, saying that I won the war while he knows that he was defeated. And what else can he do? Because I see him in a very difficult and unbelievably, complicated situation right now.
No matter what he does, he's screwed. It's just a matter of how badly he's screwed and how badly the U.S. is screwed. I mean, the moment the first missile went off, he was screwed. By the way, because Trump and because Washington has a culture of lying, and more lying, they're lying because they're breathing. They did not believe, just like they didn't believe Russia when Russia said, we will take this matter into in our own hands over Ukraine. They didn't believe Iran when Iran said we were going to hit all the bases. We're going to close the Straits of Hormuz and everything else. They said it's bluffing. That's what we do all the time. We bluff. What's bluffing? It's lying. We lie all the time. So the Iranians are lying. And when they did it, they're like, oh, crap. That's the whole, oh, crap. We don't have a plan for this. What do we do now? So now what do you do now? Well, they don't know what to do. I mean, Trump can spin this for his MAGA base, what's left of his MAGA base, and easily. They'll believe anything. Because the people that are left in MAGA, most of MAGA is left. More than half of MAGA is left because they voted for end of these wars. They voted for taking care of the country. They voted for everything but what Trump is doing. Trump was promising, but did everything opposite. They left. The people that are left in MAGA, they're the hardcore groupies. They're the people that bought Trump coins and earned Trump $30 billion before he became president. And there were Melania coins too. These are diehard idiots. They get their news just like the Democrats have their diehard woke idiots. They get all their news from MSNBC. These are the diehard Republican idiots. They get all their news from Fox or worse yet, Newsmax. Fox is balanced compared to Newsmax. If you've never read Newsmax, my God, it's the propaganda organs of the Nazi Party, for how it matters. There's everything the great leader has done. That's praised the great leader every day. It's hard. Yeah. If that's all your source of news, my God. I mean, most Republicans are not idiots, and they've left because they wanted peace. They wanted things taken care of inside the country, and Trump's betrayed all of them. But those that are left in that mega base, I mean, they're diehard fanatics. So he could spin anything to them. The problem is the rest of the Republicans, they're not going to vote Republican. They may stay home on the next elections. Trump is going to get trounced. There's a good chance. Well, there's a very good chance they're going to lose at least one house in Congress. If they lose two, then it's nothing but impeachment for the next 2 years of Trump's presidency. He's done.
Yeah. Have you heard the CPAC? They had, the crowd was asked about the impeachment. And here is what the crowd was telling, in terms of the impeachment of Donald Trump. Here is stats.
would like to see impeachment hearings? No. That was the wrong answer. Let me try it again. How many of you would like to see impeachment hearings? No. Can someone bring some coffee out for the people of CPAC?
I know.
We've got to keep this House majority. How many of you agree with that?
Yeah. You see, the situation is so dire for Donald Trump. Even in CPAC, people believe that he should be impeached. And I don't know how is it somehow impossible to change the tone right now?
You know, most of these Republicans are going to go for impeachment too. Once the casualties, really large casualty numbers start coming back and they can't hide them, most of these Republicans are going to go for impeachment too. Because a lot of Republicans hate Trump. They're just afraid of him. But once he's weakened his position totally, I mean, he could say something of his position. He just said, mission accomplished, we're done. But by the way, to do that, what are the donor-owner class going to say? Because the majority of the big donor class happens to be tied with Israel. They're going to be very unhappy. I mean, Trump's got no way to back out of this any which way. And we don't know if, some people are thinking he and his family may have been threatened. I don't think so. Manipulated, yeah, I'm sure, given very limited information, probably, because Trump 1 didn't go for this, even though Netanyahu was pushing hard back then to do this. Trump 2, early stage dementia, manipulation, psyops, yeah, it could have all happened. I don't think it was threats to his or his family's life. His family's through Kirshner and such are absolute Zionists tied directly to the Ukraine, to the government in Israel. In fact, there's British intel that was reported that him and Woodcock are just Israeli assets, and they are Israeli assets. I mean, come on, you don't have to be blind to understand that. It's just a matter of bad or worse at this point for Trump. And I think he just chose, he's going to choose worse. Unfortunately, he could just stop this today and say, we won. We changed the government. No, they did change the government. They changed the government to the worst thing they could have ever changed. They killed off the old generation that was still pro-Western and wanted to have dealings with the West. And they've replaced them with the 50-somethings that grew up on the front lines fighting the Iraqi-American proxy. And they want revenge. It's their time, and they want revenge for everything that's been done to them. Understandably so. But that's the last people who wanted to come to power, and that's the people they brought to power. This is as stupid of a move as anybody can imagine. But stupid is as stupid does.
Yeah. So, how many Ukrainians were killed by Iranian attack on these facilities, on this equipment that it seems that the Ukrainian government sent to these Arab states? It seems 12 Ukrainians, somehow, something like that. And how many Ukrainians are there, right? Because they're fighting right now. They're in the fight. And how is that possible to send forces in the Persian Gulf for these Arab states? These guys are somehow, I don't know what is happening in the mind of the Zelensky administration.
Well, Ukrainians as good American proxies, and they are, absolutely, so they're an American asset. And all American assets get tossed all over the place. We've seen Ukrainian special forces training jihadists everywhere in North Africa and in the Middle East. They trained that psychopath El Jalani and his guys for the final push against Saddam. Granted, the Syrian army collapsed, and there was a lot of issues of why it collapsed outside of all this. The Russian military in Syria wiped out 2,500 of these guys in 1 week, and the Lion Brigade is still fighting. But the fact is that these guys were prepared by the Ukrainians. We've seen throughout the Sahel that's revolted against French rule, all the jihadists in the Sahel and in northern Nigeria are all trained by Ukrainians. We see Colombians and Mexican cartels are sending troops or mercenaries in, and they're not just there for money; they're there to get combat training. And the Ukrainians are giving them combat training. The drone operators are going to be killing Americans, as well as Mexican government officials are all trained by Ukraine. And there was even an article that came out from, I think, the New York Times. 70% of the heavy weapons and missiles, Stinger missiles, Javelin missiles, and so on, mortars. I mean, these cartels have armies. They're not a bunch of thugs running around in cars shooting at each other. These are actually combat trained militias, very heavily armed combat trained militias, RPGs, javelins, stingers, drone operators. I mean, this is the whole world. And they said 70% of cartel armaments are now coming from Ukraine. Heavy enough armaments to take on the Mexican army and take on the United States border forces and level heavy casualties on. So Americans are having blowback right now from the Zelensky regime. There's going to be a lot of dead Americans around the Mexican border thanks to Zelensky, thanks to the American regime in D.C. that's arming Zelensky and has continued to arm Zelensky. Trump hasn't ever stepped back. Trump is still sending weapons there. I mean, let's be honest. He's still giving intel to the Zelensky regime, and the Zelensky regime is arming. They will train and arm any thug anywhere in the world. Nazi, drug cartels, Islamic jihadists, anybody. They don't give a damn. You got the money, you're going to get the arms and the training. That's what they're for. That's their little business. So, of course, countries like Iran, countries like Russia directly, countries like Iran and any other country that has any sanity in it has to fight this cancer as that cancer spreads into all of the European Union, the Middle East, and other places. And, it's safer for these thugs, these Zelensky thugs, to fight against Iran remotely, obviously, on these bases, than to fight against Russia. Where on average they lose about 1,500 dead a day. So their chances of survival are much better against Iran right now, as long as the Americans don't toss them across the border and make them charge up a mountainside. as long as they're so far away, they get hit. Well, they may get hit, but their survival chances are better than inside Ukraine. So they go everywhere. I mean, that's what we're looking at. That's what Zelensky is. Zelensky and his thugs are a cancer on all of humanity that, thanks to Americans, again, thanks to D.C., Washington, humanity is going to be suffering from for a long time, because no matter how many of them we destroy, by the end of this conflict, there'll still be several 100,000 of them with a very specific skill sets out looking for money and a way to earn, and weapons, by the way, lots of weapons.
Yeah. The sad reality of is this exactly. Thank you, Stas.
Thank you.
Not sure if you saw the news, but Fox News is claiming President Trump is declining in the polls. President Trump responded and says Fox.
Watching the events of the past 72 hours unfold has been like observing a grandmaster dismantle a cocky amateur who only knows how to move pawns. Just when the world thought the Strait of Hormuz was locked down tighter than Fort Knox, Pakistan and Iran have pulled off a maneuver so elegant, so devastating to the Western war machine, that it has effectively shredded every single calculation Israel and the United States made going into this conflict.
New here at 6, Iran has agreed to allow 20 ships through the Strait of Hormuz. Under the agreement, the ships must be under the Pakistani flag.
Iran has agreed to allow more Pakistani vessels through the Strait of Hormuz.
Let me paint you the picture that the corporate media is too cowardly to draw for you. For the last 4 weeks, the United States and Israel have been hammering Iran with everything they've got, or at least everything they're willing to admit to. The strategy was obvious: cripple the Iranian economy by strangling its oil exports through the Strait of Hormuz, that narrow choke point where 20% of the world's oil passes through. Trump and Netanyahu figured they could starve Iran into submission, cause a domestic uprising, and march in to install a puppet regime. But they forgot one crucial variable. The Islamic Republic does not fight with just missiles and drones. Iran fights with geometry, geography, and alliance. And here is where Pakistan enters the chat like a heavyweight champion stepping into a bar fight. On Saturday, Pakistan's Deputy Prime Minister and Foreign Minister Ishaq Dar dropped a bombshell on X that sent shockwaves from Tel Aviv to Wall Street. He announced that Iran had agreed to allow 20 additional Pakistani-flagged ships to transit the Strait of Hormuz, with 2 vessels crossing daily. Now, let that sink in for a moment. Iran is in a state of active warfare, facing the most technologically advanced air force in the world, and yet they have full, uncontested control over the strait. They have effectively said to the world, America and Israel are not allowed to pass. But Pakistan, our friend, our neighbor, our fellow nuclear power, you are welcome. The first vessel to break the blockade was the MT Karachi, a massive oil tanker that slipped through the strait back on March 15th or 16th like a ghost, carrying vital supplies directly to the Pakistani people. If that doesn't sound like a death blow to the blockade strategy, I don't know what does. Before we dive into the 6-dimensional chess that Ishaq Dar and Iran's parliamentary speaker Mohammad Bagher Ghalibaf have been playing on X, I need to ask you to do something for me. Hit the like button right now, smash that share button, and drop a comment, even if it's just a dot, to help this video overpower the algorithm. If you aren't subscribed to this channel, do it now. We are one of the last bastions of honest, high IQ journalism that refuses to kiss the ring of the deep state or the Zionist lobby. Your subscription is literally the only thing keeping us on the air. Now, let me tell you why Israel is currently having a collective panic attack. You see, the significance of this maritime agreement isn't just about oil. It's about the humiliation of the United States. Just last week, Donald Trump went on a frantic posting spree on Truth Social, claiming that the US and Iran were having very good and productive conversations, and that he was pausing strikes to negotiate. The markets reacted exactly as he hoped. Oil prices plunged, the S&P 500 surged, adding trillions in market cap, and his friends on Wall Street made a killing. But here is the ugly truth that the mainstream press is ignoring. Iran immediately denied those talks existed. An Iranian official told Fars news agency, and I quote, that there was no direct contact with Trump, not even through intermediaries. What Trump is doing is market manipulation, pure and simple. It is a pattern. Every Monday, as the markets open, Trump releases a peace offering or a negotiation update to drive down energy prices, only to have it exposed as a lie by Tehran by Tuesday. It's a pump and dump scheme run out of the Oval Office. He lies to the American people to keep gas prices low for the midterms, while his billionaire buddies cash in on the volatility. And the worst part? It didn't work this time because Pakistan and Iran have created a parallel economy that bypasses the US dollar and US sanctions entirely. Let's get into the specifics of this economic relationship, because this is where the IQ of the room really skyrockets. For years, the West has dangled the carrot of the Iran-Pakistan IP gas pipeline, only to yank it away with sanctions threats. This pipeline, stretching roughly 1,800 kilometers, was supposed to be the lifeline for Pakistan's energy-starved economy, bringing natural gas from Iran's South Pars fields directly to Nawabshah. Iran, to its credit, built its entire portion of the pipeline years ago. They kept their promise. Pakistan, unfortunately, was bullied by the United States into stalling. The U.S. State Department, under Biden and now under Trump, has repeatedly threatened sanctions against anyone doing business with Iran. But war changes the calculus. With the Strait of Hormuz technically closed to Western interests, Pakistan realized that relying on sea lanes controlled by the U.S. Fifth Fleet was suicidal. So, they flipped the script. Instead of waiting for a pipeline that Washington will never allow, Pakistan is now moving massive amounts of oil and goods directly via ship through the strait with Iran's blessing. Ishaq Dar tagged U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance and Trump's envoy, Steve Witkoff, directly in his announcement post. Can you imagine the fury inside the White House? He was essentially laughing in their faces. He tagged them to say, "Look, your sanctions are worthless. Your navy is sitting idle in the Gulf of Oman, and our ships are moving right past you because Iran trusts us more than you." This is not just diplomacy. This is psychological warfare, and the numbers back it up. Bloomberg records, which I have reviewed, show that Pakistan has effectively canceled several spot market LNG purchases from Western suppliers because they have secured a direct, overland, and now maritime supply line from Tehran that cuts out the middleman and the US dollar. Now, let's talk about the Israeli angle, because Benjamin Netanyahu must be pulling his hair out. The Israeli war plan was predicated on a simple assumption that Iran would stand alone. They thought that after the initial bombings, the axis of resistance would crumble. Instead, a nuclear power, Pakistan, has just openly aligned its logistical chain with Iran. Pakistan is not Lebanon. It is not Syria. It is not even Turkey. Pakistan is a nuclear-armed state with the 7th largest standing military in the world and a battle-hardened army that has been fighting a war on terror for 2 decades. And this brings me to the incident that almost sparked a regional war. Just days ago, during a joint U.S.-Israeli airstrike on central Tehran, explosions were reported dangerously close to the residence of Pakistan's ambassador and the Pakistani embassy compound. The ground shook violently. The Pakistan Strategic Forum, an organization affiliated with the government, issued a chilling warning. They said, and I quote, "Israel must remember, Pakistan is no Qatar. We will beat hell out of them if any harm occurred to our diplomats anywhere in the world." You have to understand the weight of that statement. Qatar is a diplomatic hub. It talks. Pakistan is a battlefield power. It acts. If those missiles had struck the embassy, if a single Pakistani diplomat had been killed, the response would not have been a strongly worded letter. Intelligence sources suggest that Pakistan has pre-planned retaliatory strikes mapped out.
Contact Roberts Air for all your heating and cooling needs.
Where would they hit? They wouldn't waste time with Hezbollah proxies. They would go straight for the source. Military analysts I have spoken to indicate that Pakistan's Shaheen-3 missiles, which have a range capable of reaching Tel Aviv, would likely be aimed at Israel's nuclear facilities at Dimona. Not to cause a radioactive fallout, but to send a message that any war that touches Pakistani soil or sovereignty becomes an existential threat to the Zionist entity. Israel cannot fight a war on 7 fronts, and they certainly cannot afford to add a nuclear-armed Pakistan to the list. Pakistan is a thorn in Israel's flesh because it possesses what the Arab armies lack: strategic depth, high-altitude battle experience, and a nuclear triad. The Israeli Air Force might dominate the skies over Syria, but they cannot march into the mountains of Balochistan. The logistics of a war with Pakistan would bankrupt Israel in a week. It is a matchup that the Israeli Defense Minister's office has war-gamed and lost every single time. So, what is the end game here? As we approach Monday morning, Trump is likely preparing another Truth Social post to calm the markets, pretending that he has a deal with Iran. But Iran, Pakistan, and their allies are playing a game of attrition. They are not looking for a knockout punch. They are looking to bleed the United States dry. By keeping the strait open for friends and closed for enemies, they are forcing the U.S. Navy to waste billions of dollars patrolling waters that are, effectively, irrelevant. The U.S. wanted a quick war to secure oil routes. They got a war of attrition that is grinding their economy down. The message from Tehran and Islamabad is clear. You cannot bomb us into isolation, and you cannot sanction us into poverty. We have each other. We have the geography, and we have the will to watch your empire crumble under the weight of your own debt. And for the people of Pakistan and Iran, that is not just victory. That is survival. That is the news. Stay informed, stay angry, and subscribe.
Right, so the spokesman for the Ansarallah movement, Yahya Saree, he's back again, folks, and he's now said the Houthis are entering the Iran war. You might have been wondering what had been keeping them all of this time. They'd announced their readiness some time ago, after all. I'd covered that. Well, in case you've been missing his daily reports from Houthi HQ, he's more than happy to update you himself.
The spokesman for Yemen's Houthis is speaking from Sana'a. We'll listen in.
Of the Yemeni armed forces regarding the immediate intervention in support of the Islamic Republic of Iran and to the resistance fronts in Lebanon, Iraq, and Palestine, and within the current situation of the escalation and the ongoing attacks against our brothers in Lebanon and Iran and Iraq and Palestine, the Yemeni armed forces, with the help and grace of Allah Almighty, has done its first military attacks with a barrage of ballistic missiles against military sensitive attacks in Israel in the south of the occupied Palestine. This operation coincides with the heroic operations by the Mujahideen in Iran and Hezbollah in Lebanon. The operation has achieved all the goals with the help of Allah Almighty. Our operations will continue till we achieve all the announced and declared objectives. The former statement of the Yemeni armed forces until the aggression against all the fronts of resistance will stop. Allah is our supporter and Allah is the grace, and with the help of Allah we will live. Long live Yemen, independent. Victory will be for Yemen and the free people of our nation. Sana'a, Yemen, the 28th of March, 2026.
Houthi forces have therefore carried out their first military operation against Israel since they downed tools at the start of the sick joke of a Gaza ceasefire that began last year, using ballistic missiles against military sites in the south, with Israeli reporting that they had sirens sounding off around Beersheba, with the missile allegedly intercepted before it crossed into Israeli territory, assuming there were actually interceptor rockets left with which to do that. Of course, we've only got Israel's word for that right now, don't we? And Ansarallah leader Abdul Malik al-Houthi had already been making it perfectly clear that the Houthis were ready to move in support of Iran, and Yahya Saree had already put the warning out in public as well, that to keep widening this war, they would use the Red Sea for hostile operations. They were ready to step in directly to block it again, just as they did before. They've been biding their time, reminding people periodically that they were at readiness, had not formally stepped in yet, but now it seems they very much have. The Houthis were not hiding their capability, after all. We've all seen what they can do, haven't we? Hold off the US and Israel at the same time, keep the Red Sea blockaded with little more than dinghies and drones, and then they wheeled out their bigger toys. Now they made the move again. Netanyahu's problem is that this is now one more front at the exact time he needs fewer of them. He's only got himself to blame for it, hasn't he? He needed the war narrowing. He needed his enemies separated instead of united. He's only got himself to point at fault for this, starting so much war on so many fronts that one war might now actually break him and Israel itself. Every time the fight now widens, therefore, another route opens for more pressure to come back at him here. Gaza's still there. The West Bank is still there. Lebanon's still there. Syria's still there. Iran's still there. Iraqi factions sitting in the background. And now the Houthis have stopped keeping their powder dry on top of that too. All at the worst possible moment for him, as he's running out of interceptors, running out of troops, running out of time. It might explain their weight, to be honest. It's all been tactical, all part of the plan. Saree was not just doing the usual solidarity performance either. He put the Red Sea right there in the warning. Keep widening the war, use that sea route for any hostile operations, and the Houthis were ready to move. That's where the story gets bigger than one missile headline towards Israel, doesn't it? Anyone can point a camera at a launch. The harder thing, therefore the more important thing, is what sits behind it. Because the real headache here is not only another incoming strike, it's the possibility that the Houthis start making the Red Sea costly again, as we know they can do. Awkward again, slower again, more dangerous again. Then you're not only dealing with sirens and interceptors and a blocked Persian Gulf, you're dealing with rerouted ships, higher insurance, naval escorts, delayed cargo, and another choke point with the Red Sea cut off hanging over the war as well. Israel's already had a taste of the maths here, and it's rotten for Netanyahu. The Houthis have shown before they don't need to match Israel or the United States ship for ship or missile for missile to create a big problem for them. They only need to make movement through that sea corridor risky enough, expensive enough, and uncertain enough that everyone else has to start burning more money and resources just to keep basic traffic going. That's the trick here. A cheaper drone or missile can still force a much more expensive response. And with the economic shocks already being felt, it can only make matters dramatically worse. A launch can trigger an interception or a route change or a convoy adjustment, a naval deployment or an insurance jump. None of that looks dramatic enough for the men who like standing at podiums talking rubbish about strength and stability, though. But it still leaves them paying the bill and protecting the route. Israel's military strain has not suddenly appeared out of thin air just because the Houthis have now acted, though. Israel have announced another 100,000 reservists on the 1st of March. Well, where are they coming from, I wonder? That's on top of the roughly 50,000 already serving from the Gaza genocide. Those people are not being dragged from their normal lives yet again just for a leisurely wander around the barracks, after all. They were for Gaza and for Lebanon and for Syria, for the West Bank, etc., etc. So when people start talking now about exhaustion and interceptor pressure, it's not some wild new theory dreamt up after one bad headline. The manpower has already been stretched. They're already scratching their heads as to where more men are going to come from. The IDF's chief of staff, Ayal Zamir, has already been warning that the army's on the verge of collapse because they simply don't have the manpower. These people are not coming from anywhere that they haven't already come from before. They're already knackered. And then the missile defense conversation has become increasingly fraught on top of that as they've run out of interceptors. And when officials start publicly batting away stories about shortages, you can usually take that as a sign the subject has well and truly become a very sore point. And it's on that point that the Houthis now have suddenly landed on. There is no fresh, comfortable, fully rested Israeli military machine with spare capacity to burn ready and waiting for them, but a tired, increasingly thinly spread war posture, reusing the same people over and over, already pulling in too many directions at once. So what this one launch from Yemen has already done is add one more direction to watch, one more route to defend, one more call on the same interceptors, the same radar coverage, the same command time, the same political need to try and feign calm and being in control, while the list of things demanding attention just keeps getting longer and longer. That's how this sort of pressure works. This is what Israel is buckling under now. It doesn't always come with one spectacular blow or explosion, but by making this same pool of men and increasingly dwindling supplies of missiles and too many difficult decisions cover too much ground for too long. Israel is just plain overstretched now, and the Houthis have just pulled on the elastic once more. Now, mainstream coverage will also be a bit selective past the point of obvious about all of this, no doubt. Another dangerous escalation in a dangerous region. Yes, thank you very much. And you can also pretend a house fire is also a heating issue if you are thick enough to believe it. The actual point is a lot simpler, though. The Houthis had not been missing from action. They'd simply been waiting. They had been saying they were ready. They had been leaving the option there in full view. Now they have moved. It's not exactly a bolt from the blue, is it? This is a fresh new front of reservists too, if you like, now being opened up at the moment Netanyahu least needed to face one. Now, a leader can survive a lot if he still looks like the one deciding the pace of things, but Netanyahu isn't that anymore, is it? And this is a guy who has built his whole image around that idea, that he hits, others react, that he widens and others flinch, that he escalates and others learn a lesson. But when more actors keep choosing their own moment to enter, as seems the case here, regardless of what you surmise the precise relationship between Iran and the Houthis to even be, that image has worn very thin all of a sudden, hasn't it? He looks less like the man setting the terms and more like the man finding out now, in public and in stages, that the terms are no longer all his. And Gaza has not gone away, and the West Bank's not gone away, and Lebanon has not gone away, and Syria has not gone away, and Iran has very obviously not gone away. So when the Houthis now fire and say they're in, it doesn't arrive in some lovely little empty space where Israel can simply turn south and sort it out. It lands on top of everything else already running. It lands on top of the same troops, the same interceptors, the same chain of command, the same public need to keep pretending this is all under control, while the list of things not under control just keeps growing. Now, that's the most awkward part for Netanyahu and those like him. They want each new strike to read as order. They want escalation to read as deterrence. They want the whole business to look like controlled punishment handed down by the strong to the weak. But the Houthis entering now says something else. It says the war is not getting simpler. It says more actors are finding their own way to answer it. It says Israel is not narrowing the field, spending more effort while more problems keep turning up. And the Red Sea is where that stops being something besides the point currently. A missile alert in southern Israel is one thing. People certainly understand that. The Red Sea is a different kind of problem because, as we already know, it drags all that shipping and freight and insurance and price pressure into the same story. The Houthis have already shown that before. They don't need to sink half the world's merchant fleet to create a headache there. They only need to make the route risky enough, costly enough, uncertain enough that everybody else has to start thinking twice and spending more money and more resources just to keep traffic moving through that Bab al-Mandeb Strait. And of course, mainstream coverage won't take that angle. They'll go with complete inanity with questions as to whether the war has widened or not. Has it widened? Ooh, I don't know. Well, of course it's widened, hasn't it? Anyone with eyes can see that the Houthis formally getting involved widens the war. The better question is what can no longer be honestly pretended. Netanyahu can't be sold as reducing the pressure around Israel when another front he badly did not need has just come alive. Equally, Israeli sustainability can't be kept in the footnotes when another actor that had been holding back has now decided it's done with waiting. But for as much as Israel is in a big pile of something warm and smelly here, they'll claim the opposite. This is what they always do when even as they get pummeled to pieces. They'll say the interception of the Houthi missile worked. Well, fine. They'll say their readiness is intact. Well, fine. They'll say deterrence still stands. Well, okay, then. They'll always have a phrase ready. They'll always have words ready. But all of those lines now have to sit next to the fact that the Houthis had warned, they had waited, they've now very much acted, while Israel very much is already overstretched elsewhere. The procedure and the official overused script is still there for them to read from. But the authority's completely gone. Who believes you? Washington has got its own problem here as well, because if the United States is already helping Israel carry the Iran fight, then a renewed Red Sea threat means more naval attention, more route protection, more escort work, more cost, more strain. They were very keen to play with the Houthis before when they were getting nowhere, were they? They picked up their ball and went home. Protect the ally, protect the shipping, protect the bases, protect the image of control, protect the route, protect the market, all at once. Stretched thinner than they already are amidst all this talk of boots on the ground and Iran saying, well, we're looking forward to meeting your soldiers. All of that for the US, for Israel across this many fronts, and they'll still say that they're winning, total victory, we're obliterating them and bringing stability when nothing, absolutely nothing would be further from the truth. Netanyahu sits right where all that pressure meets, which is why the consequence has to land on him personally in a way doesn't quite touch Trump in the same way, I feel, all the way away in Washington as he is. Netanyahu sold himself for years as the hard man who restores order by force. Yet every extra round of force now seems to invite another wave of pressure to come back and kick him up the backside. His war has not produced a clean or easy win. It's produced yet another live front for him now. His promise has not produced fewer threats. It's produced another route by which threat returns on him. So the takeaway is not just that the Houthis have hit Israel. It's that a front once held back has now been opened against a state already carrying too many live burdens. Or while the larger fear behind it sits in the next choke point and the next root problem and the next bill and the next siren. For more on the latest goings on in the mainstream that the mainstream media will not bother to tell you all about, do stick with the channel. More coverage on the latest just here. Please do.
Coffee. Follow me.